There's no time.
The time is
13
o'clock.
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Wednesday.
Yep.
Time once again for the show.
Yeah, this is gonna be a fun, more of a fun show. Video Nasties. We're returning to Video Nasties.
Yeah, we did do a show about this like
movies.
a long time ago.
Yeah, movies that
But-
were banned in England.
Yeah,
Basically.
like kind of some of them were banned. It was like kind of complicated, but I guess like some of them were banned, and then some of them were just I don't know. There was like this whole like legal thing about it. I feel like it's mostly past now because they do still have. I mean, they still have a thing where it's like the equivalent of the American MPAA, right? Where, you know, they see a film and they're like, well, they decide what they're going to rate it. And they said, oh, well, we would rate it, for example, in the U.S., it'd be like, we're going to rate it NC-17 unless you cut out this, that, and the other, and then it'll be an R. So it's kind of the same kind of thing. But yeah, there was kind of starting in, I guess, the late 70s, early 80s, there was a massive, massive moral panic in the UK about these exploitation films, mostly horror films. You know, and how they were going to cause the downfall of civilization.
Well, that's what usually happens. You release some fucking movies, man, fucking civilization will fall.
He said the sound is very low. I wonder why. I haven't changed anything. So I don't really know why it would be, but...
Yeah, everybody's saying it. Well, no, one person is saying it.
No, just one person.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just you.
It might just be just you, dude.
I mean, I didn't touch anything,
Yeah.
so I don't really know.
Let me see. One person is saying it.
No, just one person.
Yeah, it seems normal.
just you.
It's normal here on my device.
Gramther said, Snake Plissken is back. Escape from New York 3, starring Crussell, was announced today.
No. Really? He's got to be bullshit. Kurt Russell's too old to be Snake Plissken.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of overweight, too, last I saw him.
I haven't seen him. Well, I saw him in Christmas Chronicles. And he didn't look fat in that. I don't know. Ben's still saying that the sound is low, but... I mean, you were just listening to it on your device, and you said it sounded normal.
Yeah.
But I haven't changed
Yeah.
any of the settings or anything like that. I was recording shit earlier, but I didn't... You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, unless maybe I can turn it up here. Is that any
He
better?
said the intro music sounded normal. Could
Yeah.
be that we're not screaming, maybe?
Like, we're not screaming like usual.
Yeah. We're not drunk yet. Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
Castelar Garcia said...
Oh, wait a minute. Is that pointed more towards me instead of you?
Maybe. I don't know.
Put the
Maybe it
low
got
mic
maybe
over
it
there.
got moved.
Yeah, maybe that's what
Maybe
it
it
was.
got moved. Because I probably like hit it with my
Yeah.
arm or something like that. I probably hit it with my arm.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah,
So-
you know, if I haven't heard anything about Escape from New York 3. I haven't heard anything about that. It wouldn't be called Escape from New York unless it's Escape from New York again.
That would be funny if that's what it was called.
Yeah.
Escape from New York again.
Yeah.
Like just in parentheses. Escape from I don't know where could they escape from?
They could do it. He could probably do it. I don't know.
I can't really. I don't know. Like
It would have to be like he'd have to go on cycle, fucking get back into training and lose a bunch of fat. He could do it. But then,
Bless you,
How you
Pokey.
doing, Poke?
She's back there sneezing. Ben says, now I can't hear Tom. I don't know why. It's like, I seriously did not touch anything. I swear to God.
Yeah.
I didn't touch anything on here.
He's fucking with us. Yeah, all right.
Oh, that's all you were going to say about
Yeah,
that?
that's all I
I
was gonna
thought
say
you were
about
going
it.
to, yeah.
No, yeah, I broke out of my fucking thing now. I can't remember what I was gonna say.
Escape from Earth was the title I heard a few years back.
They already did that.
Escape from the planet.
They already did that. Basically, Lockout was Escape from Earth.
Maybe they're going to, like, do that, but
Yeah.
with Crussell in it.
If you watch Lockout, that's an Escape from New York. That's a Snake Plissken movie.
It is,
That
yeah.
was the.
Well, wasn't that the original
I
intention?
think that was the original script.
That
And
was
they
the
got
original
that
intention.
other guy to do it. Dude that played fucking Peter Wayland and Prometheus. What was that guy's name?
Yeah.
Forgot
Yeah,
that
Slasher Fred just brought up Lockout.
guy. Yeah, Lockout.
And so did Hugo.
You're right. Lockout.
And,
I liked Lockout. Lockout was good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Ben says Extra was an Alien ripoff, wasn't it? Extra was... I think it was sort of like an E.T. ripoff, too. But it was, like, way, way weirder.
I remember when it came out.
And way darker.
Yeah.
I did a video about it over on my Scare Salon channel not too long ago. That's a weird-ass fucking movie. It's nothing like Alien. It's actually more like E.T., but, like, a million times more fucked up in a horror movie. You know what I mean? It's a lot more like that. Dave is here. Hey, how you doing? How's everybody doing out there? Man, it's taken me a while to kind of like get into the swing because I was so busy today and I just feel like I was like I got behind on everything. Like I had my list of stuff to do and I only got like half of it done, so I was like freaking out.
And she had to do stuff for clients.
Yeah, so I was like panicking because I'm just like, oh my god, I gotta do the show, and it's like I'm not ready, you know what I mean? So I was like running around like a crazy person. So hopefully I don't like fuck this show up too bad. So I mean, I do know a little bit about this because we've done a show about it before. And to be honest, it's just kind of like, we do have like a couple of British listeners, so that'll be good too. And they can maybe like contribute more because I didn't live there at the time that this was going on. So I lived there later, but I did kind of like hear about it, so I do know a little bit about it, but only for like at one remove, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I haven't seen all the movies on the Nasties list. Maybe that's one thing that I should do for that'll take a long time, but maybe that's one thing I should do for my other channel is maybe I should go through all the video Nasties and like watch all of them, like all the ones that were on the list. I think altogether, like the main list, which I think is like the section 1 ones, which were like successfully prosecuted or whatever, I think that's 39 movies. And then, but altogether there's like 3 different sections, I think, and it's like 72 movies. But the weird thing is like, that's the thing. I kind of feel like anything having to do with this type of censorship, it's always going to be like really arbitrary because it's just going to be like, I mean, there's all these stories about movies that really aren't that bad that got, because they had like a lurid cover image or like a fucked up sounding title or something like that, then they got cut, whereas something that was like way worse, like somehow got passed, either because like the people weren't really watching it that day or they were just in a different mood or something like that. So everything was like, it seemed like there was a lot of arbitrariness about it. Mango said it was a crazy time. You could get hold of the banned movies, though, if you knew where to go. Yeah, that was the thing. It was just kind of like, they didn't really stop anybody from seeing it. And much like, I mean, it kind of like kicked off this whole panic, but in a lot of ways, like people that were really into horror were like, oh, well, here's a list of movies we need to see then. You know what I mean? It just like drew more attention to them.
The Streisand effect.
Right. Like when maybe if nobody had brought it up, like everyone, a lot of them were like really probably not that great of movies and probably nobody would even seen them. If somebody hadn't come out and be like, oh my God, it's the worst thing ever.
A lot of things governments do backfire. They're just kind of, you got dumb people working in there. Hey, we're gonna ban these movies, and then everybody will see them.
They're like, ooh, thanks for like compiling a list.
Right. Even back in the 80s, the system was porous. You could do it. It's just like banning drugs. Banning drugs just means drugs flooded in here in the United States. It's stupid.
Well, and they kind of, the way that they approached this in the UK in the 80s was very much the way, and they, I mean, I saw like some clips like from back then of like, some of the censors and stuff like that like legit like compared it to drugs. Like if you bring these videotapes into their house, like it's just almost like bringing drugs in, because it's children and want somebody to think of the children. And
little did they know all their rich political families invested in the drugs, in the drug market. That's where all their political campaigns came. A lot of it came from drug money. And it was the same thing, man. You make anything illegal, especially here in the United States, as defiant as Americans are, you just turn something worthless into gold. And then all the rich people run and want to get involved in that business. It's a huge return. You'd be stupid not to deal in that.
Well, I was reading, that's the thing. But the thing about it is that, I mean, you could argue, even though I'm a big advocate of like drug legalization, You know what I mean? Just legalizing, decriminalizing.
Just suck all the money right out
and
of
just
it.
like regulating it the way you would regulate alcohol. Don't give it to kids or nothing like that, obviously.
Yeah.
But we do that with alcohol, so just do it with drugs.
Yeah.
But you could even argue that it's even dumber with movies, because movies, they can't really hurt you. I mean, unless you pick up a big ass videotape and whack somebody upside the head with it.
No, they thought they could hurt you.
That's what I'm saying. That's what their argument was.
Yeah.
But the thing about it was that all of these kind of like studies that I was watching this documentary earlier, where this one guy who was a journalist at the time, who thought the whole thing was bullshit and was like trying to come out and like figure out what it was that they were talking about. Because I think initially one of the arguments that they used, they said, oh, we did this study and 40% of children under 8 or something like that have seen at least one of the movies on this list. And this journalist he was like real muckraking, and he went and like figured out, he's like, yeah, this is how they came to the 40%. He's like, they sent out a shit ton of questionnaires like to families with kids under that age, and they asked the kids, how many of you have seen these movies? And they're like, they got only like a handful of the things back. Like most people didn't even bother to send them back. And they said that 3 of the kids on the questionnaires that came back said between them that they had seen 17 of them. They don't know if the kids actually saw them, but they reported that they'd seen them. Between those 3 kids, it was 17 movies. So they did some math, and that they came to like 40%. And they're like, so 40%, but it was 3 kids that said they saw. And so like this other guy was like, he had the smart idea. He's like, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to send out a questionnaire to a bunch of little kids, and I'm going to put like real titles and fake ones on there. And then I'm going to see if they like say, oh yeah, I saw that one. And what was in that? What was that one about? And these kids were clearly like pulling shit out of their ass.
Yeah.
They were just trying to like be like all badass and everything. Oh yeah, I saw that one. Like somebody's head got cut off. It was so gross. Blah blah blah. Like they were all saying shit like that. They're like, we made up those movies. Those are not real movies. Those are not real movies.
We had a similar thing happen here in the United States. I remember it. I guess I was probably 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And it was a Dungeons and Dragons scare.
Yeah.
Where you had families. You had like groups of family groups, political groups made up by moms supposedly, trying to ban Dungeons and Dragons because it would get kids to kill other kids. Just weird shit like that. That they would lose grip with reality and become these.
They thought they could really do magic
fictional
and stuff.
Characters and go out, and kill people like they were monsters and kill monsters and think people were monsters and then summon the devil and shit.
They made a movie about that called Mazes and Monsters with Tom Hanks, a very young Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
It's a cringy movie.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to like do it because it's on Tubi. Yeah. So I was like, that would be funny. We could talk about, there was like an actual like real case that kind of inspired that, but obviously it was like, and man, Jack Chick got all up in that too. Yeah. He made like a whole bunch of those little little like super conservative comics about Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah. He had a bunch of those.
When we were in 7th and 8th grade at fucking SCMA, Southern California Military Academy, that's where I was at that time. We all had those Dungeons and Dragons books. And we didn't really play the games. We had the figurines, but we more just read those books and talked about
the books were just cool, like, and all the art and stuff.
Yeah, and the artwork and everything, We never really had a chance to play the games, because it took years to figure out how to play the game. So usually by the time you figured out how to play it, you'd kind of, in our case,
like, bored.
Fuck all that shit. Because video games.
Too much effort.
Yeah, video games started to come.
Yeah.
But they were real good books and good artwork, Errol Otis was like a fucking famous artist commercial type artist that came out of there. And it was the same thing. It was this fucking moral panic. And then it turned out that behind this were churches. Churches were behind the moral panic. They didn't like anything that could compete with the church. And anything that referenced magic and monsters and demons, they had tried to stamp that out. Now, in the United States, if you're not an American, there is no organized church, really, in the United States. There's like 20, 30, 40 different competing versions of Christianity, depending on what region you're in, like Methodists and Baptists and, Southern Baptists and Catholics, and they don't have any government power. But they'd put them on television like they did, and you had political parties kowtowing to them.
I mean, if they cry enough, then they can get shit passed.
Yeah, political parties would start kowtowing to them. But a lot of that shit, they'd pass it, and I'd forget all about anything ever coming out of it, because that's another thing. it's big money to pass laws, and you make a lot of money trying to pass laws. And being a politician, you make a lot of money. Whether or not those laws are actually applied or enforced or make a difference, a lot of times nothing ever gets any traction on the ground, because each state has its own legal system. There's 50 states in here, and then a lot of it never really. A lot of it. There's no mechanism for enforcement, and people just kind of do whatever they want anyway. You ask the American, you ask the average American, they really couldn't tell you what's legal or not legal. They just don't. They know that you can't steal and you can't rape and you can't kill people. You can't set things on fire, and you don't want to get caught with drugs. Other than that, they don't know the laws. It doesn't matter. You don't have much contact with law enforcement unless you're out there fucking in some kind of drug war or drunk driving a lot. You can drink and drive. You just can't be so fucking drunk that you call attention to yourself.
Ben says, did you see the movie Censor a year or so ago? I did. It's awesome. That was actually one of my favorite horror movies that I saw in the last couple of years. Yeah, that's a really, really good movie if you haven't seen it. And it's kind of about this. It's about a woman that worked for the BBFC, the British Board of Film Censors, which they later called the British Board of Film Classification, which I was like, okay. We still know what you're up to, but they were like bowdlerizing that word. Ben also says, in Australia, all R-rated movies were banned from sale in Queensland, which is a very conservative state. So every horror or slasher movie would proclaim banned in Queensland on their cover. That's what I mean. It's like they're just working against themselves. They're just working against themselves. John Smith said, yep, when I was a kid, mom and pop video shops were still a thing, and a lot of them kept a supply under the counter. If you had money and no one else was in the shop, say, it's for my dad. Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like most people could get them, but, it's just kind of like, I kind of feel like, and like I said, I was watching a documentary. I watched a couple of documentaries earlier today about this whole phenomenon, and a couple of them pointed out, they said, well, the thing about it was that, at this point, I think Thatcher had been in for a couple of years at this stage. And, they always wanted to look like they were tough on crime, blah, blah, because crime had been getting a lot worse. And so, a lot of people have speculated that they decided they were going to, have this huge moral panic and pick on these horror movies because most of the distributors of this were, not rich. It was just mom and pop video shops, like I said. Most of the people that made these movies, they were just, underground exploitation movies. They couldn't really fight back. And it was, an easy scapegoat. It's really, really easy. Just like every time something bad happens, everybody says, oh, violent video games or, something like that. Something, innocuous that, obviously is not the cause for that because it's much easier to just blame that thing than blame, larger systemic forces, which are, it's a lot more complicated and more harder to tease out. So it's really easy to stir up outrage against one thing. You know what I mean? And in particular, I think the video nasties thing in the UK, the Daily Mail was a big, huge part of how that got exploded so much because they were always ban the sadist videos. They'd put it on there really big. So and they were selling a lot of papers, a lot of crotchety old ladies because they'd never seen any of those movies. They didn't know what the fuck was going on. They just heard about stuff that
those are the ones you want to get. There's a bunch of crotchety old ladies and just tell them this happened. Oh, okay, well we got to stop that.
Yeah,
that's the kind of shit they would do here sometimes. There's only one movie that should have never been made, and I think some people should have gone to jail for it. It's that damn Italian cannibal movie where they were cutting up all those animals.
Cannibal Holocaust.
Cannibal Holocaust, yeah. That dude.
Well, that's definitely on the nasties list.
Yeah, that dude should have gone to prison for that.
And in the UK, it's still, the animal cruelty is still cut out.
No.
They said they don't, generally, nowadays, they don't usually, they said, even later movies like Hostel, the Hostel series and stuff like that, which are a million times worse than anything you saw back then, most of those pass, with no cuts or minimal cuts. But, they said one thing they do have a lot of problems with is real animal cruelty. If you have real animal cruelty, they will cut that.
I tried to watch that shit until that dude grabbed that little Quadamundie, and stuck that stick through it. And I was like, no, fuck this shit. I turned that off. I didn't want anything to do with that. And that was back in the 70s, but I just... I'm like, man, they killed that animal just so it could be on a movie. That's fucking wrong.
Yeah, that's fucked
know?
up. That's that's
with
one
a sharp
thing.
Stick.
That's one thing. I would argue, like, I'm a very anti-censorship person, but, there are limits. Like I said, you can't just, like, make a fucking snuff film, obviously. And so I kind of feel like that's along the same lines, because you're not, I mean, I don't have a problem with, because you could say something like Apocalypse Now, where they did actually, but they ate that, and it's like they would have done it anyway. If you're just doing it for a movie, though, then fuck that.
And that was just a regular ritual slaughter. They just cut that cow's head off, and they show it in slow motion to make it look more graphic than what it really is. But if you saw that, I think it was slightly in slow motion. I think it was. If that cow didn't feel that, it went down and they severed that spinal column fucking instantly. That cow didn't know what happened, what hit it. But that was food,
Yeah.
They were planning to eat that. They didn't torture it, Fucking stick it down, blunt stick through a little coatimundi, or cut a turtle open alive, and just that Cannibal Holocaust movie. That dude should have gone to prison for that. Everybody involved in that should have went to prison for that.
He did get called up to trial, but they weren't. I mean, they weren't really. They were worried about the animals. They thought that the people really got killed too, but that's kind of why, because the animal cruelty in that is absolutely real.
Yeah, I can't believe that dude didn't do time. The actors should have done time for doing that. You couldn't put me on there and say, "Hey man, we're paying you. Here, stick this quad of money. It's all right. I got it."
There's no way I would not do that.
Fuck no.
I quit.
Yeah.
Nope, not doing it.
Yeah, and I fucking kill squirrels and deer and shit, but I eat all that.
Dude, I was watching not too long ago. I was watching. You remember that cheesy '70s movie Kingdom of the Spiders?
Yeah.
With the Shat.
You're stepping on the tarantulas. Yeah.
I couldn't even watch that.
Yeah.
I like spiders, but that's the thing. I was just kind of like, did they really kill that tarantula? Like, fuck this movie. I was like, oh my god. I don't even like him to kill spiders in movies or bugs or anything. I saw a movie.
Tarantulas kind of has a value to it. You know what I mean? It's not the same as. Like, you seeing them crushing roaches, those are vermin, they're everywhere. But I've seen movies where they step on roaches or fucking spray a roach. Shit, that's nothing,
Yeah, that doesn't bother me as much because I don't like roaches.
I think you could say, well, a scorpion or a tarantula is only $30 or $40. Still, that's kind of an exotic, animal, kind of. It's something you get from a pet store. At least in the United States, and he's like, that's not too cool. That's a big arthropod. You can say, well, you eat crabs, yeah, but you're not killing crabs for a movie.
Yeah, I think that's the distinction. It's like it's like the entertainment value.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of like, because I do kind of feel like in the United States, at least, like, it obviously was a lot more lax back then. Nowadays, I don't think they would allow you to do that because they would have like pretty much any movie that's going to have any kind of animal in it, insects or not, or insects or arthropods or whatever. They're going to have somebody there monitoring that shit because they don't. I mean, obviously, it might happen where some of them get hurt and stuff like that, but they do have somebody monitoring it. You're not just allowed to kill them for. And now that they have CGI, there's really no reason for that to occur.
Movies are entertainment. You got to have a fucking basic respect for life,
Yeah, exactly.
And even if you're shooting Apocalypse Now and you got tribal people out there slaughtering I don't think it was a cow. I think it was a water buffalo, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. It was an ox or a water buffalo. Yeah.
And they slaughtered it, but that's what they eat, And it was all set up some kind of ritual. They were going to do that anyway. They just included it in the movie.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that either because they ate that. That's part of their life cycle. Fucking every time predators and prey relationship, animals eating one another, humans eating other animals, that's all part of the cycle of life since millions and billions of years, That's just how it is. But you just don't put an animal on fucking screen and kill it. For no fucking reason.
Just for no reason.
Just to have it on a damn movie, and then they don't eat it, and then they were torturing them in Cannibal Holocaust. That's unacceptable.
Yeah, so that's kind of one.
No.
You know what I mean? It's like, look, I'm a big horror movie fan. I'm just like, I'm of the opinion that if the shit is fake, I would even go to bat for a Serbian film, which is a terrible movie. I mean, it's a beautifully shot movie, but it's it's not something that you really want to watch, to be honest with you, because like it has the worst shit ever in it. But it's fake. Yeah. And even if I don't personally want to sit through it again, I'm not going to sit here and argue that like nobody should ever see it or that they shouldn't have made it or something like that. It's fake.
Faking you out is an art form. That goes way back, man. They were trying to fake you out back in the late 1800s, early 1900s with special effects. And evidently they had, I think it was in France, they were doing live acts on stage that today you'd call a slasher film.
Yeah.
But it was stuff that they would do on stage live and
the
try to...
Grand Guignol.
Yeah, they would try to convince you that they just killed somebody or did something to somebody.
Yeah. It
was fake, though.
They were hardcore.
Yeah, like sticking something through somebody's eyeball.
Yeah, that was like a big thing. Yeah. That was like a big art form back in the day.
Yeah.
Like I said, Grand Guignol, that's what they called it. That was like the theater. Yeah. And that was a source of pride for them. It's like, how realistic could they like make? So people have always wanted to do that.
Yeah. And the art form is that it was fake.
Yeah, and they're making you think it's real.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. I think that's the thing that people, and I think the main problem when you have people, because if you saw like some of the clips like from the 80s of the people that were on the BBFC back that were watching all these movies, because they did watch all the movies, I mean, to be fair, but it's like these were like the most rickety, like boomer, uptight motherfuckers. They were just like these really, really elderly, you know, they really didn't have any idea at all about exploitation cinema, about the value of it. It's like they didn't like horror movies. They thought they were trashy. It's like all this other kind of shit. And it's like, you know, horror has like a really long storied history. It's not just this, you know, redheaded stepchild. But I mean, I kind of feel like in the 70s and 80s it still was. So it was like really easy to like kick around, you know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, well, you know, smart people or upper class people or something like that. Like they don't like that kind of thing because it's beneath them. So it was like really, really easy. Because I do kind of feel like maybe more than, you know, the similar moral panics that we had in the US about like horror comics and stuff like that. Because we had a similar thing happen, I think, in the 50s and 60s. But I kind of feel like in the UK there was a very specific like class thing to it as well, because you definitely had like all the dudes and ladies that were on the BBFC were like very kind of like middle to upper class, and they were like, oh, well, we can sit here and watch these movies all day long and say, oh, we should cut that, we should cut that, we should cut that. But it's like we're protecting the hoi polloi who are maybe too stupid to, you know, be able to deal with these. So, like I said, it came across as very arrogant to me, because they were saying that we can see these, but you know, you don't have the fortitude to watch them, because they sat there and watched every single one of them, sometimes several times. And it's like, oh, well, they didn't think they were going to become depraved by watching that stuff. And some of them even kind of said that outright. It's like, oh, it's not us we're worried about. It's, you know, those people.
Yeah.
It's poor people. It's poor people.
Yeah, they might. Yeah.
They thought that poor people like would be too easily influenced, but of course they wouldn't be.
Right.
Which to me, like, that was kind of like the crux of the whole matter.
That's just still going on today.
Well, that's the thing, and it's like I said, it was a very specifically class conscious thing in the UK, which I don't know if there was so much. I guess there was a little bit of a class component like in the US, but there's always like the class thing is always way more pronounced when you're talking about the UK. Because it's weird though, because I kind of feel like, and having lived there and like known a lot of British people in my time, they think it's kind of funny because they're like, well, yeah, the class thing is a lot more pronounced in the UK, but like they're a lot more aware of it. They said there's still a class thing in the US, but everybody pretends like there's not. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's true. But like over there, they're like a lot more aware of it, because it's like, well, kind of like.
I disagree with that, because in the United States, if you go up the socioeconomic ladder, they don't become more moral here; they become less. Less.
Well, I'm not talking about morality necessarily. Yeah. I'm just talking about like in the UK, there's a lot of there's kind of a lot of things with like the higher up you are, like the, you know, the way they talk, or like, you know, the things that they own, like the things that they do, stuff like that. It's like very, very stratified. I don't know about nowadays, like it might be different now, it probably is, but I do kind of feel like that's something that is a little bit different like in the US, but that was definitely a component of the video.
A lot of the feelings of false morality in the United States come from the upper middle class and the very nouveau rich, like the people that haven't had a lot of money for a long time. They kind of have that attitude. But real rich people here are indistinguishable from criminals. They're just like drug cartel type leaders or whatever. They buy and sell people. They have fucking pleasure islands like shit out of damn Caligula and stuff. You know, they're bad. And this is now proven that that's the way they are. They buy and sell people. They have fucking exploitation rings and everything's fucking gamified, and it's just a bunch of rackets. And a lot of them have been around for fucking generations. Because it's old money, and they're just if you were to meet them, and they evidently don't comport themselves very well. The English that they use is fucking pretty bad. They cuss a lot, and they're not people you'd want to hang out with.
Well, I cuss a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about they're not genteel people. That's a middle class thing. They're more like gangsters.
Well, that's kind of like the UK too. It's like you get people that are middle class or aspire to be upper class, and they're a lot more proper than people that are actually upper class. Because people that are actually upper class and have had money their whole life, they don't have to impress anyone because they've had money their whole life. So they're not trying to like aspire or like be something that they're not, because they're already that. So they can just act however because they can get away with whatever.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But I will say that multiple studies have shown, just as a sideline, that people that swear a lot tend to be more intelligent.
Yeah, well, that's why.
I'm not really sure.
Just look at me.
Why?
Just look at me.
Gramther says, I'm way behind on the comments. Right. Gramther says, wasn't Faces of Death banned in the U.S., or at least that's what we told each other in 8th grade during our secret porn and horror movie parties?
We'd say that.
Yeah,
and
it's
we
so
go down
banned.
And rent it.
It's like,
And then we go down and rent it, remember? Go to Blockbuster and rent that shit. Or
fucking, this is banned.
Or fucking
Blockbuster didn't have it.
That was New York Video, or what was the name of that other one? Something the red.
It was a Hollywood Video.
Hollywood Video.
I think that was
the
that
red and white one.
I think that was yellow and white though.
Was it? Okay.
I can't remember.
I thought it was
the one
red
I
and
went
white.
to was Movie Gallery.
Yeah. We said, "Oh, this shit's banned, man. You must be watching that. Let's rent it."
Yeah.
But when you're a teenager,
kids are dumb.
You don't fucking we're gonna rent it then. Okay, let's rent it. Yeah, we're gonna rent this banned movie.
There was more than one Faces of Death. It was a whole series.
Yeah, they all kind of sucked.
Well, there was real shit in there and fake shit in there. And a lot of the shit that was fake was not really that well faked.
Yeah.
And a lot of the shit that was real was like National Geographic type shit. And a lot of it was kind of like, animal cruelty and that kind of stuff, which I don't really want to watch that. That's not a good time. I mean, I did...
Some of it was fake animal cruelty.
Well,
like the monkey eating the monkey brains, that was fake.
Yeah, that was fake. But that's the thing. It's like I can't. That's another good idea that I should do over my other channel. Like watching all the Faces of Death and like figure it out, like how fake. Because I haven't seen them in such a long time. But the thing about.
I wasn't impressed even at the time.
No, I remember not being impressed either. Because like it had such a reputation.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is real. Oh my god, like it's a documentary. And
it's
like
a fake documentary too.
Yeah.
I'm going.
It's a mockumentary.
This is a shitty documentary. Just the voiceovers.
It's like these special effects.
And they're just
really
trying
shitty.
They're trying to join one subject to the next, and the way they are linked together is just fake as fuck. You can tell that they just have a bunch of random footage that they have to show.
That they're trying to
show you all of it, and they're trying to connect this shit. It's a fake documentary. It's not a documentary.
Wasn't there one?
It's just showing you
there
shit.
was one that was of like a guy in an electric chair, right?
Yeah, that was fake.
I know it was, but it's like, I kind of remember that. I kind of remember one. Wasn't there an alligator eating a person?
Yeah, and then the guy that was on stage and something fell on his head had a blade on it. That looked fake.
Oh, that's right.
The guy who shot himself on television, I think that might have been real.
Oh, that was real because that's like a famous case.
Yeah.
That's happened more than once, but that one case, I can't remember the dude's name, but like that dude was like actually like pretty famous. Like he shot himself on live TV.
Yeah, killed himself.
Wait, was it a dude or was it a woman?
It was a dude. Shot. He had.
Because I thought a woman did it once too, but I can't remember.
He was a news reporter, wasn't he?
He was. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah, I didn't see it like when it happened, but I rember hearing about it. So that was real.
Killed himself live on television. They showed
that was real, but
it wasn't too impressive. That's why they showed it, I guess.
Yeah,
it wasn't that
that's
gross.
the thing.
Yeah.
But
you're like, man, that dude shot himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of times, like if you see the real shit, it doesn't look as. I mean, because in a horror movie they want it to look cinematic, so they're gonna like exaggerate it. If you see it in real life, a lot of times it doesn't really look as cool. Like not always, but I still remember they did show, and I don't know if some of these were fake, but you remember in driver's ed, like in high school, where they showed you those movies like Blood on the Highway and all that kind of stuff, which was purportedly videos of like real accidents, which I'm sure some of them probably were. I don't know.
Oh, some of that shit was. I remember it.
But, well, the one I remember specifically was, it was these two old people. It was an elderly couple, and their car, I think, had gone off an overpass, and then it caught fire. And so they pulled, and they showed them like pulling their like barbecued bodies out of there, and that was pretty fucking gross.
What about the guy that they pulled out of the car and threw him on the damn stretcher, and his jaws torn out of his head? I kind of remember that one. And it's flapping around.
I remember having to have like a permission slip and everything like that. Like, hey, we're gonna show your kids like this really fucked up shit today in class.
That's when you were in high school. Grandpa's remembers it.
I remember.
Grandpa's remember. You're in high school and you got to go through driver's ed. You got to go early.
They're scaring you straight.
And you got to go early before school is open. You got to go through the driver's ed course, and that went on. I don't know, about a month, I guess, to get your driver's permit. And part of it is just before you go out and fucking drive, the safety part, they show you all the damn snuff flicks of all the dead people that got killed in the car, so you take it seriously. Yeah, and it is effective.
It is.
It is effective to show you what happens if you fuck up. But me and Graptors, man, we were driving. I think we were 16, weren't we? In the United States, you're driving to 16 or 17. I think we got learner's permits.
You can get a learner's permit at 15.
At 15?
And then you can get your regular... At least that's how it was when I was that age. Because I got a learner's permit when I was 15, and then you can get your license when you're 16, like the following year.
Maybe that's what it was. It might have been 15 or 16. Grandpa's probably remember. I don't know if we were in the same driver's class, but I'm sure he got his shit at Trenton High also. But, and then the fucking... that driver's ed teacher, I forgot his name. You'd remember the short sleeve shirt and his fucking glasses. He had the birth control glasses and his fucking tie. And now you're gonna drive good. He's like that. But he was something else. I don't remember that guy. But it would be dark out. It'd be so early. We'd have to show up at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's still dark out to do driver's ed. And then eventually you're fucking driving, man. And then later on, your fucking driver's license shows up. I tried to tell that to a Japanese girl one time that we were driving at 15, 16, and that blew her mind, man. I guess they don't drive that early.
Yeah. I mean, you can drive at 15, you can get a learner's permit.
Yeah.
But you can't drive by yourself. You always have to have like an older driver in the car with you.
Somebody with a license,
unless you're going to or from work, then they give you like, you're not supposed to drive at night either.
Yeah. And you never get pulled over.
No, it's like they don't know. They can't tell how old you are.
You're just driving.
Like, unless you look like a child,
right,
in which case they might.
Yeah.
You know? Let me see. Danny Rowling said, first time I saw a house on the edge of the park blew me away. I couldn't believe what I just saw, like I was watching a rape genre of porno. Yeah. It was awesome. No films gripped my attention like that film did. I remember that. I remember that movie. That was definitely, like, on the Nasties list, too. And honestly, like, there was a lot... I mean, I haven't seen that for a really long time, but I remember the one, like, I Spit on Your Grave being on there, which, like I said, I will, even though that is a really, really unpleasant movie to watch, because, like, the rape scene in that is really, really long and, like, really, really unpleasant. Yeah. But I would defend that movie. I would defend that movie because they're showing rape like it would actually happen. Like, it's not titillating, it's not sexy, it's not... And I don't think you're even supposed to be titillated by it. You're supposed to be horrified by it. So that's kind of the whole point.
All right, Grandpa's came back. It was 6 a.m. The driver's ed. Mr. Matthews. Man, he remembers all those fucking teachers. Matthews, that's right. He says, we were juniors in high school. Okay. So we were about 16, I think, then. Right? 15 or 16? I don't remember how old a junior was.
Junior is about 16. I think sophomore is 15.
Okay. He said I had a bunch of hotties in my driver's ed class, always popping wood during those. Like, okay, yeah, understand that. Yeah.
Ben says those shops, presumably the ones that had the video nasties, happily sold cigarettes and booze to children, including individual cigarettes to school kids. They didn't care about selling or hiring videos. Yeah, I kind of feel like, because I think, at least from my understanding, I think cable and satellite TV kind of caught on quicker in the US than it did in the UK. So conversely, the UK, the home video market started like booming over there before it started booming over here. You know what I mean? So because they didn't really have the same extent of like cable and satellite TV, so everybody was going and renting movies. And at least in my understanding, like people that grew up during that time period that I've talked to, they said, yeah, like pretty much every corner shop had like a shit ton of videos that you could rent because that's just what you did. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't anything else to watch. So, you know, so you could get them everywhere. And there was ones like under the counter too.
Yeah.
And John Smith is talking about the Damned song. Yeah, they did a song called Video Nasty. I'm in love with Video Nasty. Actually, that was on Young Ones. They had an episode called Nasty that had the Damned on there, which is actually my favorite episode. That was one where Alexei Sale was a vampire from South Africa. Wasn't he from the Transvaal or something like that? I haven't seen it in a long time. But that's like a really funny fucking episode. And they went and like rented like a VCR, and it was like 1982 or some shit like that. Richard Brown said Thatcher got in 1979. That's right. I thought it was like sometime around then. Let's see. Oh, what I was going to say a long time ago was that Blockbuster, we didn't actually, where I lived growing up in Daytona Beach, we didn't actually get a Blockbuster until probably like the 90s, like the mid-90s. And prior to that, we had kind of gone to more like mom and pop video shops, the kind with like, you know, the porn in the back. Blockbuster, because they were more of like a large chain, they did not have porn, and they also would not stock anything over an R. And even then, like a lot of movies, if there was a movie that was like kind of questionable, like had some like fucked up shit in it, you couldn't get it there, or you could only get like a cut version. Because I remember that happening because I was really into horror. And once Blockbuster took over and like kind of put all the other like mom and pop video shops out of business, at least where I grew up, it was really, really difficult to get hold of kind of more extreme horror movies or more obscure horror movies because Blockbuster didn't have them. It's like, no, man, we just want to have like 40 bajillion copies of, you know, whatever the big fucking movie was that year, like Titanic or whatever. We have like 50,000 copies of that, but you can't have like this one horror indie movie. So a lot of times I would either have to, and that was before they really had the internet to any great degree, so a lot of times I'd have to like stock up and like buy them through like magazine ads, or I'd have to like wait till I went to New York City and like, you know, go to Kim's or something like that and like stock up on shit there because you couldn't get it, you couldn't rent them. Blockbuster didn't have a lot of that kind of stuff. Also too, they had I didn't know if you know this, but Walmart, they sold DVDs, you know, and movies and stuff, but they would only sell the cut versions too. So you couldn't get like uncut editions of stuff. I think people take it for granted nowadays how easy it is to get like shit anything you want that's like uncut. It's like, even if you can't get it in this country, just order it from like another country. It's like no problem at all. And if you have a VPN, you can watch shit on streaming services from like other countries, and it's like super easy. But back then it was a pain in the ass. And you never knew like what you were getting. It's like, what was cut out of this? You might order something that says it's uncut and it wasn't, and it's like all kind of stuff.
Well, there was shit out there you didn't even know existed.
Right, exactly.
Like you'd be in some band like Bauhaus, and there'd have been videos that you didn't know that there was a video for that song because there was nowhere where there was no place where it was compiled. And there was all these different merchants and different distributors, and you didn't know what was out there. You just find something. Look what I found. You know, look at this album. I didn't know this existed. You know, it's just the way it was back then. Yeah,
that's true. It was much harder. Like I said, that's why. Yeah. I mean, I think we kind of like romanticize that time period, and even to it, such an extent that people that are really into horror movies, especially people that are like our age, they kind of like. They're kind of like, well, we only want to see like the video nasties, but we want to see them like they were back then, like on really, really shitty like VHS, because it's not the same experience like seeing them all cleaned up and everything like that. It's like you want it to kind of look like it's all fucking sleazy and, you know, like you're not supposed to be watching it. That like kind of adds to the whole experience, which I get that. But because they were saying earlier like how the one guy was saying how he has a hard time like watching Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like the all remastered and everything like that. He's like, because I'm so used to like just seeing this shitty old beat up VHS where it was almost like black and white because it had been like re-recorded so many times.
Yeah, that's why, you know, sometimes I'll say on the show how, you know, I like the Flash Gordon, you know, with the Dino De Laurentiis Flash Gordon. Most people had only seen that on television, and it looked like shit on television. I saw it in the theater twice. It looked fucking great. The costumes and everything. It didn't look cheap on film. It looked real expensive, but it looked cheap when it got on the cable. So I'm glad that I got that Blu-ray and the HD television. You see, it's like it was on the theater, man. It looked great. It was a wacky fucking flick, but I was so pissed that they never came out with a sequel. But, you know, I liked it better than Star Wars.
It's a fun movie.
I liked it, yeah, at the time.
It's a fun movie.
It had sex and drugs in it.
Well, yeah, that
Princess
always,
Zara?
that
Oh,
always
man.
helps. That
It had
always helps.
BDSM in it. I was loving it, man. I was like, it was goofy, but the source material was goofy, you know?
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Slasher Fred said, if you guys ever see that movie called Grindhouse, yeah, I like that one. That movie pays homage to the classic 70s exploitation movies. I actually saw that in the theater with the in-between trailer, when it was a double feature. You know what I mean? Like with the trailers in between and like the fake trailers and stuff. That was like a fun experience. Now they have it as two separate movies. Like now they have it as Death Proof and Planet Terror. And then like you have to watch. But I went and saw it in the theater when they showed both movies back to back, like with all those fake trailers in the middle, and that was like really, really cool. So I'm sure you can probably still get it like that. John Smith said, yeah, Christian weirdos such as Mary Whitehouse had a lot to answer for. Yeah, Mary Whitehouse. She's like, you look up Old Biddy in the dictionary, and there she is. You know what? One of the funniest things about that whole, because she became in the UK, she kind of became the most visible face of the video nasty panic. And, you know, kind of since punk and all that kind of stuff was going on at the time, too. Like, I thought it was funny that actually one producer of porn magazines, like, made a porn magazine called White House, like, named after her so she would get offended. So I thought that was, like, super funny. Let's see. Ben says, protecting children and the mentally feeble who might be corrupted by evil films. John Smith said, I think the BBFC had a thing for violence that could be imitated. Yeah, that's the thing. I kind of feel like like I said, a lot of their shit seemed like kind of arbitrary. And a couple of them even said that, because I saw some interviews like from the time period. And the guy was like, well, we don't have any rules specifically. It's just kind of like they have to take everything on a case by case basis. So it's like sometimes they would pass some shit. And then sometimes they wouldn't pass shit like that seemed more mild than that, but they always seem to have like the rationale, like you said, that they thought someone could imitate it. Like one of the Rambo movies, I remember it wasn't a video nasty or anything like that, but when they were talking about you know, cuts to it, they said they were actually more bothered by, because you know, in I don't even remember if it was Rambo 2 or I don't remember which Rambo movie it was, but it was one of the Rambo movies that has like a 15-minute sequence of just basically Rambo shooting everybody. They're like, they were less bothered by that than they were like one scene with a kid like with a knife going like, ooh, I'm gonna be like Rambo, you know what I mean? Because they thought, oh, if a kid sees that, like he'll relate to that kid and maybe he'll go and pick up a knife and stab somebody.
Ridiculous.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
They're afraid that people will mimic it. What you could see that would apply to anything.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If you take
about?
That to its logical conclusion, or its
then that
illogical
means you can't show anybody anything.
then you can't show anybody anything because it's like you can't.
You can mimic it.
And
That's
and the thing about it is like, well, particularly movies too, it's like you really have to take context into consideration because it's like you can't just like pick and choose like little bits of things because that's not, I mean, in service of the wider story. You know, and somebody was saying this earlier, and we've kind of said this a lot too, because we talk a lot about serial killers and shit like that. It's like if you talk about stuff like that, that doesn't mean you're like advocating for it, or like you think it's okay, or you think it's cool, or anything like that.
If you show something to somebody, it doesn't mean that they do it.
And if you show something in a movie, that doesn't mean that you're saying, hey, this is cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The whole point of a horror movie
is to freak
you out and to scare you and to horrify you. So they're showing you imagery that's supposed to be... You're not really supposed to be watching and going, awesome, I'm going to do that.
Here's the thing. Most crimes that happen are pretty mundane. They don't have anything to do with what was seen in the movie. Like, dudes aren't robbing liquor stores because they saw it in the movie. They're robbing liquor stores because they need drug buddy.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's very practical consideration.
Very practical. All right? And, you know, that doesn't have anything to do with what they saw in a movie. And then when you look at the fucking real heinous serial killers, none of that was shown in the movie, really. They made that up on their own. The movies had nothing to do with what John Wayne Gacy was doing. Well, I saw this movie.
And then that gave me the idea.
Yeah, this guy was attracted to these young guys, and was raping and torturing him and putting him in the bottom, in the walls of his house and down in the crawl spaces. And I thought that'd be a good idea. It inspired me. No, that's not what happened.
It's like
with
that's
Gacy
what
at
I
all.
aspire to.
Yeah, that's not how.
I'm gonna put that on my dream board.
And it's not like what's his name? Shit. Man, now I'm drawing a blank. The best serial killer of all times, Bundy.
The best serial killer.
Bundy. Okay, the best one of all time.
Best in
Bundy
which way?
didn't see a movie about a dude who's going out raping and killing all these beautiful women.
And cutting their heads off.
Right, yeah. That had nothing to do with the movie. It had to do with it turned out his sister was his mom, and his mom was his grandma, and he was an underachiever, and he just was fucked up, Women kept dumping him, and he lost his fucking mind. It didn't have anything to do with movies. Zero.
I would argue that if you are a completely normal person and then see a horror movie and suddenly say, that's a good idea, I'm going to do that shit, then you're not a normal person.
You're not a normal person, right.
Because most normal... And honestly, here's the thing, and I always kind of bring this example up. Look at a country like Japan. Japan, they have some fucked up movies.
They got a real low crime rate.
Way worse than ours. Yeah. Holy shit, have you seen some of those movies? Korea, too, like to a lesser extent.
Yeah.
They have super, super low crime rate. So that's obviously not what's causing the crime, because they have way, way, way more violent shit than we have.
Dean Coral, who I think was fucking one of the worst ones.
The Candyman.
Oh, man. He had this teenage boy that would go out and recruit other teenage boys and bring them back in time to a board and torture them and shit. Stick glass rods up in their fucking urethras and break it with fucking pliers and shit. He even got two brothers to attempt to beat each other to death so one of them could live. That's how he was an ex-army leather daddy.
That's like some Saw shit, right?
Yeah,
there.
Like something out of Saw.
But that came later, see?
Right, and that was what, late 70s, early 80s?
Something like that, I can't remember.
It had nothing to do with movies.
No.
He didn't watch any movie to do that. Movies weren't influencing
That's what I mean. They came up with that shit all
This is all internal perversions. It's people that act on it. It's a very deep-rooted problem in them. It's going to be fucking something biologically, something chemically wrong with them. Mixed in with a bad upbringing. And
notably, I would argue that,
they're mutants, really.
For example... there was a big, I don't know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre I don't think was ever considered a video nasty, but it was one that a lot of people brought up, even though, if you haven't seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre in a long time, really the most lurid thing about it is its title. Some fucked up shit happens in it, but a lot of it is suggested. They don't really show anything, but, I think that's why it's such a great movie, because it's all implication. Yeah. But the thing about Texas Chainsaw Massacre is that it's loosely based on a real guy.
Yeah.
Horror movies have to take ideas from these motherfuckers.
Right, yeah.
It's not the other way around. Right. They already came up with that shit on their own. Yeah. And then horror movie people are like, holy crap, that's some fucked up shit. I'm going to make a movie about that. I couldn't even think of that because I'm a normal person.
Movies don't create those guys.
No, not at all.
Those guys are kind of born and developed like that.
They're already like that.
That is their, I guess you could say, that is their sexual orientation. And you can't show somebody a movie and get them to do that. No. It's a lot more deeper. It's deeper. They're born and raised to do that, and then there's a whole bunch of problems in them, I think, genetically. It's not a normal person, I don't think. Because you can abuse, little kids have been abused and shit when they grew up normal.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of factors that have to happen.
That's what I'm saying. A lot of things have to come together in the worst possible way to produce somebody like that.
Some of it has to be, if you ask me, biological.
I'm sure it is.
Some problem somewhere in there.
And then it's exacerbated by. But see, not always, because a lot of times, sometimes serial killers, they have a relatively normal upbringing.
Yeah.
And they still turn out fucked up. But that's rarer. I will say that. But it does happen.
Hormones are very powerful. I always wanted to know these serial killers, they need to go in there and do a blood analysis test on them and look and see if they're actually producing testosterone. And if the testosterone they're producing, is it a mutant strain of it? Is something more like nandrolone maybe? Or maybe it's something a little bit more like trenbolone. Because some of that shit is mind-altering. I bet you there's something biological wrong going on in there in the endocrine system. I fucked around with some weird ass fucking hormones and steroids and shit like that, and that it is mind altering. And I bet you they're not producing normal hormones.
Well, there's got to be something the matter with that.
Because it's,
and like I said,
it's keyed in with sex drive.
And I don't think that's the only thing going on. I think, like I said, it has to be like a perfect storm of a lot of different things.
Because I've read that the endocrine system will sit there and it'll try to pump out a certain hormone, and not all the little hormonal fucking compounds that it's making are perfect. Some of them are more imperfect. It's not quite the same hormone, but it doesn't add up to enough. But that dude might be making lots of it. Lots of something that's fucked up, and maybe it acts more like nandrolone or something than it does testosterone. I bet you they've never really looked at that.
I don't know. I kind of feel like that's something that they would have looked at.
You think they would have looked at that?
I mean, you would think. They looked at like most other like genetic kind of components, so I don't know. I never looked it up, so I wouldn't know. I mean, that seems like something that seems...
Yeah, they're making testosterone, but it's a weird variant of it, maybe, that is slightly mind-altering. More aggression, more sex drive, more into the damn... What do you call it? Make you bloodthirsty and sadistic, which I imagine there's probably hormones that can do that.
Yeah, Ben says, Mary Whitehouse had a huge influence, and she was basically a busybody, puritanical housewife. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And she, like I said, she kind of became the face of the whole video nasty thing. Which is, it's funny because I believe that it was the makers of Cannibal Holocaust, and they were trying to drum up publicity for their film, so they sent Mary Whitehouse an anonymous letter complaining about their own movie because they were hoping to get the Streisand effect going, which they didn't call it that back then, but it's the same thing.
Richard Brown brought up a good egg.
But, well, I'm like way behind on the comments because, so I'm trying to like catch up on everybody. But yeah, I forgot what I was talking about. Never mind. I guess it wasn't important. So anyway, Mr. 88 says, Benoit's L'Age d'Or, which is Golden Age, I guess, shows a close-up of a woman's eyeball being sliced open with a razor. I thought that was, Andalusian Dog, the Salvador Dali one, which they did show the razor in the eye. It was actually like a cow's eyeball. So it was actually a razor slicing an eyeball. It's just obviously wasn't a person's eye. Richard Brown said Americans talk about class more than the British do. Yeah, like I said, it's been a long time, so I haven't been over there, so I don't really know. We need to eat the rich. Yeah, okay. They're probably delicious. Well marbled. You know what I mean? Let's see. Mom group do. Yeah, that's what that Andalusian Dog. That's what I was just saying. Keeping Up Appearances. I remember that show. Yeah, that's Danny Rowling says, and I remember this too. In England, they weren't even allowed to have Michelangelo, the orange bandana Ninja Turtle, have nunchucks, which is bullshit. Yeah, they actually called them Teenage Mutant. What do they call them? Teenage Mutant something turtles, but they
couldn't say ninja, huh?
Yeah, they couldn't say ninja. What the fuck was it?
Maybe warrior.
No. I can't remember what it was. And yeah, they specifically didn't have... I was watching a thing earlier that said, there was a cartoon where one of them was like using sausages as nunchucks, and they cut that scene out. Because it's like, it was still nunchucks. They don't do that anymore, but they used to. Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, thank you. That's what it was. I knew that they had changed the name. I thought that was like really funny. John Gora said, interesting fact, the director of Faces of Death went on to make The Fall Guy. So there you go. Let's see. Fake animal cruelty seen in Dead Alive. Stomps the rat back into death. Yeah, we need to do Dead Alive. Have you ever seen that? Oh my god, it's a lot. I mean, it's like, it's a horror comedy, but it's like super, super over the top. It's like just fucking blood and gore, and it's hilarious. It's like The Evil Dead, but like a lot more. You know what I mean? Just blood everywhere. Mango says, I was going to talk about this guy. At the time of the bans, James Furman was in charge of the BBFC. I was working in the film industry at the time. If you wanted your movie to get a lower certificate, you could pay a fee to him, and it passed. Yeah, I kind of feel like there was a lot of that kind of shit going on. And I think a guy that... Was that same guy, or the guy that came in later that was actually... Because I was watching a documentary earlier, and they were talking about one of the guys that worked at the BBFC who was actually like... who was actually really into cinema and knew a lot of the people. Like, he knew Ken Russell. So they were talking about the whole brouhaha about The Devils, that Ken Russell movie, that very famously has... We reviewed it, like, probably, like, last year, I think, where it very famously has that kind of, like... it's based on a true story. but it has that scene where all those nuns are like masturbating and, you know, fucking the Jesus on the cross kind of thing. And it's funny because they have all these letters going back and forth between Ken Russell and the guy at the BBFC, and them like telling them that he has to like cut all this stuff out, and him like begging them not to take this stuff out, like, please take out the nun, you know, pretending to masturbate with the candle or whatever. And it's just like, it's very, very funny, like just the way the matter of fact way that they talk about it, and like all the stuff that they're trying to get him to take out is just like, so I mean, it wasn't funny at the time because he was really just like, please don't cut my movie to pieces, but I mean, I don't know. It was just like really funny. But he was like friends with the guy at the Censorship, so they were like a little bit more lenient. They did tend to be more lenient on films that were seen as having like artistic merit. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, although, I mean, they did come down hard on like, you know, Salo, the 120 Days of Sodom. But those letters were funny too, because like, you know, the guy would like write back and be like, okay, I've taken out the shit eating. Now can we just like do this and that, the other thing? And it's just like, oh my God, it's just like fucking hilarious. But, like I said, it wasn't funny at the time, but, yeah, Ben says the Californian comptroller who shot himself on air. Yeah. Yeah, the woman was an anchor woman. The guy was a politician. Yeah, I thought it was a woman that shot herself, like the news person. I thought it was a woman that shot herself on TV. Like we were talking about Faces of Death like before. Leardo dude said if that electric chair dude was fake, then he needs an Academy Award. Then John Smith said Reefer Madness. Oh my God. I fucking love, we need to cover Reefer Madness one of these days too, because that's, oh my God, that shit was fucking hilarious. You could tell that whoever made that movie had never smoked pot before in their whole entire life. I mean, the way that people were acting, they took like one puff off the shit and then they started acting like complete lunatics. I'm just like, yeah, that's not what happens, but okay. Let's see. Danny Rowling said, speaking of video nasties, the Italian film Night Train Murders takes place on Christmas, making it a Christmas flick, technically, which would be cool to see reviewed, just saying. Okay, well, I'll take that under advisement. And let me see. Mr. 88 said they did not have to fake car accident footage. Drivers were impaled on the steering column quite frequently. I would imagine that would be very gory. Actually, my grandmother's brother died like that when he was a teenager. He hit a pole or a tree, and he was impaled on the steering column. And then Danny Rowling said the best gore website showed way more horrific shit than any video nasty. That's the thing. It's like, that's the thing. Other than, you know, we've talked about Cannibal Holocaust. Yes, that had real animal cruelty in it. I think some of the other films, you know, they kind of got cut for that too. But most of the other movies, they're fake. And a lot of them weren't even really that good. And if you watch them now, they're pretty tame. But just, you know, the fact that they thought they had never seen anything like that.
Yeah, you passed a good.
Where?
Richard Brown. Look, he's talking about Ted Bundy.
I didn't see it. Hold on.
Right here.
Where?
Yeah.
Oh, Ted Bundy blamed pornography, but when they searched his home, they found not one piece of porn.
Yeah, pornography didn't make him go kill women.
I mean, if pornography made you kill people, then everybody would be killing people.
Yeah.
At least every dude would be killing people because they all watch porn.
I remember somebody commented on that on a documentary that I once watched about Ted Bundy, and that they said that while he was on death row, waiting execution, which that took years, a lot of like social activist groups kept approaching him, and he would deal with them and like take up their causes sometimes, so he could get off of death row and, like, you know, get some candy or something, you know. And one of them, I think that they said, was that anti-pornography groups, and he was just saying, yeah, pornography did it. I'm saved, you know. I'm with Jesus now. He was doing shit like that.
I kind of feel like a lot of them do that kind of stuff, like just to make themselves.
They're trying to make themselves relevant.
Yeah.
And other groups want to use them as a puppet. But they get off of death row and they're able to have a day where they can get out of the cell and they can go do an interview and maybe see some chick that'll interview them and they'll get a sandwich, and, you know, that's why they do that shit.
Yeah, that's all it is. They don't mean any of that crap. Well, and I do kind of feel like, you know, especially serial killers or multiple murderers and stuff like that, a lot of them go to prison and then it'd be like, oh, well, I found Jesus now, like, you know, parole me. You know what I mean? It's that kind of shit. They're just trying to get something.
Yeah, but I remember them talking about that he blamed pornography about something, but he didn't have any pornography. I think there was a big anti-porn thing going on at the time, and he was just trying to blame other things. It wasn't me. It was the porn. You know, that's just the kind of shit that they would do.
Well, back in the old days, they'd say the devil made me do it.
Yeah, but then they back off on all that shit. You know, they're going, oh no, I was the best at what I did. You know, yeah, that Green River Killer guy. Yeah, he's a scumbag. Like, he's a bottom feeder. That's what he called the Green River Killer, a bottom feeder. Yeah. I
mean,
because they didn't caught him. They hadn't caught Ridgway yet.
Yeah.
They went to him to try to see if they could help him, and he was just saying, well, and Bundy looked at victimology, and they were prostitutes, and he goes, he's going after them. He's like, he's a bottom feeder. He goes, look at my girls. My girls were all fucking beautiful and upstanding, you know. So they try to, you know, they compete against one another. Be like, you know, oh yeah, he's trashy, that guy.
That's fucked up.
Yeah,
There's a hierarchy.
Good girls.
There's a hierarchy even among serial killers.
He said it was evidence that he wasn't hot and that he wasn't skilled. That he couldn't gain a woman's trust. That he had to hunt from the bottom of the pile. Yeah.
Oh, Ted.
Well, Ted saw himself as awesome. He saw himself as awesome. Ted could get a girlfriend.
Unfortunately, nobody else in the world did.
He could get a girlfriend, though. He had a couple. He had some hot girlfriends that he was able to keep that he never killed. But he moved on. Remember that? And then, like, one of them was he had some ultra fan who was a lawyer who wanted to marry him. I think she did marry him, didn't she? I was on death row.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
She was kind of
women that are attracted to these guys.
Yeah, but like I said, those ladies have their own issues. Gonna say. I mean.
Yeah, you got mental problems.
Yeah.
If you like those guys.
Big time.
They have this fantasy that they're going to save him.
I kind of feel like that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like this thing. I know there's kind of like an overarching belief that, women like bad boys, which, you know, maybe that's true to some extent, but not all women are like that.
They have to be able to live with you.
That's the thing. It's just like, it's like maybe, so it's like a little bit of that, but then it's like that, like taken to like a horrible, horrible extreme.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all it is. Like they just think, oh, he's the worst of the worst, but he loves me and he wouldn't kill me. Like, I'm special.
Yeah, he would never hurt me.
But like I said, that's messed up. Like, you know what I mean? That's really messed up. You really need some like therapy. Like if you think like that, it's like pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Let me see. I got really behind again. Okay. Mango said that was John Trevlin. That's right, that was his name. Who was in charge of the BBFC at the time of the Devils. He passed The Exorcist uncut. Well, see, that's the thing, is that what happened, I kind of feel like, because when home video started coming to the fore, like in the late 70s, there was already, like I said, they already had like a thing like the MPAA that would certify movies for the theater. You know what I mean? Just like we had, they'd give it a certificate, like they call it over there, which is either like, you know, 15 or 18 or whatever, like would say what, like who could see it, like if kids could see it or not. So they already had that, and just like the MPAA does in the United States, I mean, that had been around, I think, since 1912, like in the UK. I'm not sure like when the MPAA came around in the US, but it was the same kind of thing. They'd watch movies and be like, oh, well, you know, should we trim anything out of this, or what age could see this, or blah, blah, blah. So they had that already. But the thing about it was that when home video first came into, you know, it was a new technology at the time, and they realized that they didn't really have any laws covering that. You know what I mean? They only had laws covering like the theater kind of shit. They didn't have any legislation specifically for video content. The only thing that they had was a law that had passed in 1959, which is called the Obscene Publications Act, which is just for porn. It wasn't for violent movies or anything like that. It was just for pornography. Like basically just saying, you know, you could be prosecuted if you sold like, you know, sold shit to kids or something like that. So that's basically all they had. So I think the thing about it was that they were kind of left scrambling because there was this gap, and in this gap in the market, people realized, you know, people that made these like low budget, really violent like exploitation movies realized, hey, we can just like release these on videotape and we don't even have to like give them to anybody to be certified. We don't have to cut them. We don't have to do anything because there was no law that covered that for a little while. So there was kind of like a gap in the market because the technology was new and they hadn't really thought about it. You know what I mean? So for a time, you could kind of get anything. Like, people were just coming up with all kind of like crazy, horrible shit, like from other countries and stuff like that, because you could release anything you wanted because it wasn't playing in a theater. So it didn't have to be rated, and you could like put whatever you wanted in there. Ironically, though, what ended up happening later on was that some movies, you know, like The Exorcist or something like that, which had already played in cinemas and had been passed and were fine, but then like when they came out on home video, like they had to be like looked at anew, and then sometimes they would cut them up because they'd be like, oh, well, we shouldn't have passed this, or like it was different people and shit like that. So like I said, it was like really, really arbitrary, like the whole kind of thing. I mean, the thing about the Obscene Publications Act, which, like I said, I kind of feel like that was more toward porn, but I guess it was just kind of like one of those things where, who was it that said like obscenity, like, or pornography, it's like you can't define it, like you know it when you see it.
I don't know, but he's right.
I kind of feel like
There's some shit that didn't have nudity in it, and I'm going, that's so hot, that's porn. Yeah. It just gives you a certain feeling when you see it. You know what it is. You know what it is when you see it.
Yeah, well, I don't remember if they said that specifically about obscenity or about pornography. But the Obscene Publications Act in the UK, basically it defined obscenity as anything that would tend to deprave and corrupt persons who are likely to read, see, or hear the matter contained or embodied in it, you know, having regarded to all relevant circumstances. So they're basically like, if somebody sees it and they think it's obscene, then pretty much it's obscene. I mean, that's kind of what it sounds like what they're saying. You know what I mean? And the thing about like a lot of the movies that ended up on the Video Nasties list, some of them I feel like maybe wouldn't have ended up on there if like one motherfucker somewhere didn't like complain about it.
I know porn when I see it, but I don't agree with it that just because it's porn, it's obscene. That's the thing.
Yeah, there's really a big chasm of difference.
Yeah, it's a big fucking difference.
There's a chasm of difference.
Yeah.
I mean, I do kind of feel like I said, I'm not saying that you should just be able to show anything to anybody. Like, that's dumb. You know, you shouldn't be able to make a snuff film. I don't think you should be able to, like, I don't think you'd be showing porn to, like, little kids or nothing like that. But if you're an adult, I really don't see that you can't watch pretty much, like, within reason, like, watch pretty much whatever you want. I mean, you should be able to be the arbiter of what you can handle and what you can't. Like I said, as long as it's not real and nobody got, like, exploited for the shit.
And here's another thing, man. People say, well, these, you know, got all this internet, man. These kids are getting a hold of porn. Shit, we were getting a hold of it when I was fucking 8 and 9.
That's what I mean. People have been, like, kids have been, it was harder back then, but they still did it.
It wasn't that hard.
That's what I'm saying. I mean,
hard.
yeah, it's a lot easier nowadays, but they were doing it back then too.
What?
Yeah?
What's the problem? She's gonna, this is boring. Come on. It's boring? Okay.
Jeffy Art said, erotica is very subjective, hence fetish content. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It just kind of seems like, you know, what's the matter, Pokey?
She's upset.
What are you complaining about?
She's like, it's too boring.
Are you upset because we're not paying attention?
Yeah. She's purring. You're purring? It's just bored, huh? Okay.
She's like, okay.
Yeah. She wants me to throw things to her.
Well, you can if you want. You can throw things back.
Nah, she's got to do the show. Gotta do the show, Pook. I can't throw right now.
She doesn't like things thrown in here anyway.
No, she wants me to throw out in the living room.
Yeah.
So she can fucking jump up in the air and try to grab it. I throw little mice and little toys, just throw them and she catch. The cats are little catching machines. That's all they do. They catch machines.
John Gore said, internet porn is way crazier than the Playboys, Hustlers, and Penthouses I grew up with. That's the thing. I kind of feel like because it was more expensive. I mean, obviously it's more expensive to put out like a full color, like glossy magazine back then. So they're going to try and appeal to as wide an audience as possible. So it's going to be kind of like vanilla or kind of like not all that exciting or like not all that weird. But the internet is just, it's so free, you can put anything on there pretty much. So it's like, you know, all bets are off. You can put whatever the fuck you want to on there, and like somebody will find it. Like,
even in the
their niche
early
thing.
80s, we were getting a hold of fucking Club International and shit like that. Some of it was fucking hardcore porn. Some of it was. We just got our hands on whatever we could. Fucking, they'd have that shit stashed outside, and kids were fucking sharing it and shit out. You know, like, oh man, look, somebody brought a new stack. You know, it was a different time. It was a different time.
Yeah.
And that was like fucking, I guess I was about between the ages of fucking 8 and maybe fucking 13, 10, no, 8 and 12 probably. After that, you could get your hands on fucking porn. You could buy it from your friends at school. Hey, look what I got. Wow, what's it? Yeah, okay. And then you fucking buy it from them or trade it. Yeah. We used to do it back then. There's magazines back then.
Well, and the thing about it too is that, like, you know, jumping off from that, you know, kids were like, you know, trading porn in school.
Yeah.
They were also trading like
drugs.
Well, no.
Okay, sorry.
What I was gonna say was they were, you know, getting back to the topic.
Okay.
Was horror comics.
Okay.
Horror comics and horror books, because I kind of feel like the term nasty, like in the UK, which later became applied to video nasty, was originally applied to books.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like those kind of like cheap paperback books that, not necessarily horror, but anything that had like a lot, like real graphic violence in it, or like was Nazi exploitation or something like that. So kids love fucked up shit. They just do.
Yeah.
I mean, I did. Every kid I know did. So if you had something that was like salacious or that you weren't supposed to have, whether it was smut or whether it was horror shit or whether it was something that was like way above like your age, then everybody wanted a piece of that. Everybody wanted to see what that was.
I didn't see any drugs in middle school. Got into high school, and I went to 2 high schools. I went to the same high school with Grampers in Michigan, Trenton High, and then I went to Escola Graduada de São Paulo in fucking São Paulo, Brazil. And I traveled between the two. Like, I went back to Brazil for my senior year, and there were drugs in both of those high schools. Trenton, weed, LSD, and mescaline. We had that. Brazil, rich people drugs. Cocaine, really good weed. Couldn't get LSD, but just mostly cocaine and weed. And we didn't have to worry about alcohol because alcohol was legal for a person in high school in Brazil. I could walk right into a bar or a club, order a drink. It was great. That's where I went down the wrong road. No, I'm just kidding. But so there's no way of controlling anything. You couldn't control anything back then. It's just
yeah, like I said, I don't think it should be encouraged.
No.
Like if I had kids, which I don't, but if I had kids, I wouldn't be like, here, have a beer, or here, watch some porn, or, you know, watch fucking, I don't know, like I'm trying to think of like a real fucked up like horror movie. But, you know, just watch that. It's like, I'm not going to show my kids that.
Yeah, another thing that's funny, though, when you think about it, parents would have been horrified that there were drugs in high school back in the 80s and 90s. They would be horrified today. But we were pretty responsible with them. It's not like it was out of control. You know, you knew when you were high. You'd stay out of trouble when you were high. And, you know, we didn't do it every day. It was just sometimes.
That's the thing about it. It's
didn't
like
end the world because you could get a joint or get a hit of acid. It didn't. I think
that's
it was
what I mean.
I think
It's
it's
like
positive, actually.
most people.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's always going to be people that like get addicted to it or something like that, but you can't.
That was rare, man.
That's what I mean, and you can't like just restrict everybody's access to it just because a handful of people, you know, can't handle it or can't deal with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just kind of like, you know, there's a lot of things. It's just, I don't know. I guess I get offended because I'm like a big fan of horror, and I really like, you know, gore films and stuff like that. So it's just kind of like, you know, I don't go around trying to ban like other people's entertainment that I don't personally like. Like, I don't like particular kinds of music or particular kind of movies, but I'm not saying that other people can't watch those.
There's a certain
I'm not going to watch them, but it's like, if you want to watch them, who cares?
There's a certain kind of person, and you pay attention, you'll see it today, that are control freaks. All right? They have to control your access to shit that they don't like. You like it, but they don't like it, so they don't want you to have it. you think things that they don't want you to think. So they're trying to get rid of what you think. It's just they have people that are just micromanaging control freaks. And guess what? Guess where do you think they gravitate? Fucking government and in the legal system, because they're control freaks. My response to all that is just ignore them fuckers. Ignore them. They're full of shit. Just watch your P's and Q's. Do what you want. Don't hurt anybody else. You'll be all right.
Victor says, I got internet in my room in 1995 when I was a freshman in high school, and it made me gay.
It did. It did gay as shit. Couldn't resist it, man.
That's all right. John Gore...
Booty falling down out of the ceiling at you, fucking ass first, just landing on you. You know, it wasn't your fault.
I'm a big fan of gay porn.
It was just you know, it wasn't your fault.
Gay porn is more interesting to me than straight porn.
Girls like gay porn. That's what they like.
I mean, not all girls, but this girl. I like gay porn.
Every girl I ever dated fucking watched gay porn. Gay porn and lesbian porn.
Yeah. Nobody wants straight porn. That's boring.
They didn't like that. Well, the thing is in most straight porn, the guys aren't very interesting. And the focus is on the female, and fucking it's not so situational, I guess. Not very artistic. But of course, every girl I dated watched gay porn, gay interracial porn, or lesbian porn.
I kind of feel, well, the thing about a lot of straight porn, and this is obviously like a generalization because there's tons of different kinds out there, but I kind of feel like straight porn is more, since it's more geared towards straight men,
that's what it's for.
Then it's more towards, so like the women a lot of times don't look like they're really enjoying themselves because it's all like for, you know, it's posed the way like guys would like and shit like that. So it's just kind of like, I always feel like the women don't look like they're having that good a time.
Well, a lot of that's corporate shit. You know, Disney fucking corporation and its expanse has a lot to do with the fucking corporate porn. I think it was called Viacom, and which is part of Disney. They're behind a lot. It's very color by numbers, very kind of like mass production. The best porn is fucking shit that's made at home. And fucking OnlyFans stuff and stuff that, you know what I mean, made by individual creators. Because a lot of the people in the fucking full-on porn industry are just burned out. That's just a job for them.
That's what I mean. They don't look like, in
shit.
Some ways, like amateur porn, I can see why that's a lot better because it's like these are people that would be probably having sex with each other anyway, and they just happen to be like filming it. So you don't get the thing where it's just kind of like, it's when is this going to be over?
Some girl with her camera and her own fans making a custom-made video for some dude who threw $1,000 at her, dropped her $1,000, and she makes this fucking video. She's like, yeah, and it's like the shit she likes to do anyway. Like you never really see her. There's one girl who you never saw her face; you just see her body. She edits and she does herself in public in weird places. And in one place, she does it in a Catholic church when it's open. Pretty hot, pretty fucking hot, and full-figured chick. You know, she never shows her face because she's in public. And it's in Germany. I know she's German. But that was a long time ago. I guess it's been 10 years now. But that's some of her shit's still classic. For solo scenes. Legendary.
Well, like in a way, that's kind of like, those are kind of, I see that. That's kind of like hotter because that's somebody just doing what they want to do. Like, nobody's making them do it or, you know, they're just doing what they want to do.
Yeah, and she got
And that's like way more hot than like... just somebody being there and being like, yeah, I really wish I wasn't in this uncomfortable position.
And that chick's figure for that body type, it's not 10 out of 10. It's 11 out of 10. All right. You can find it. Girl masturbates in church. Fucking just keep looking for it. You'll find it. You'll never see her face. She edits it out through camera angles.
Dudes don't care about girls' faces anyway.
Well, she's breaking the law.
Breaking the law.
It was illegal. She's doing this
shit in
public.
Obviously. So, that's illegal pretty much everywhere, as far as I know. John Gora said, I remember when teachers used to freak when we brought Mad into school, more innocent times. I remember in high school, I got sent to the guidance counselor's office because I was reading Pet Cemetery.
Yeah, fucking stupid shit.
My French teacher sent me. They thought that I was like...
They probably had no idea what that is.
Well, and that's what I was trying to get back to, is that I kind of feel like these... Like I said, if you see these motherfuckers... they were essentially like proud of the job they were doing. They thought they were like, you know, saving the morals of the nation or whatever. And these are just like these elderly, like crypt keeper looking motherfuckers. And they, you know what I mean? And like, yeah, and they're like, they have no idea about the history of horror. They have no idea about why people watch that kind of stuff. They don't think of it as any kind of like artistic expression. They don't think of it like that. To them, it's just like trash. and nobody should be watching it. And if you do watch it, you're like morally depraved. And they have no idea. They just don't understand like the context behind it or anything.
They're saying I'm quite a bit quieter than you because of the microphone, probably. Maybe so. Mango's asking for the link. Let's see if I can find it, and I'll fucking point you down the right direction.
All right.
Been a long time since I've seen that one.
John Smith says, though not on the nasty list, A Clockwork Orange was clandestine too, was withdrawn by Kubrick in the UK due to odd people turning up at his home. Yeah, I kind of feel like that's a lot of people misperceive, and like the Wikipedia page, I guess, is like pretty good about describing this, but a lot of people misperceive like A Clockwork Orange as being either like that the UK government banned it or like that it was a video nasty. It didn't actually work like that. I think, as far as I'm aware, and please, if you're in the UK, please correct me if I'm wrong, I thought that A Clockwork Orange passed uncut for cinemas. But then later on, Kubrick got death threats and shit like that, like about the content of the movie, and he chose to withdraw it. So it wasn't so much that he was forced to withdraw it. I believe that it passed without cuts, but I could be wrong. I don't know if they cut out like the rape scenes and stuff like that, because it is like a pretty unpleasant movie to watch, even though it's one of my favorite movies of all time. But that wasn't imposed on him. He did that himself. Like, he just withdrew it from because he was like afraid that something bad was going to happen because he got threatened. Mango said, I was always having my comic books taken off me at junior school, and it was always the same teacher. Ian England says, decriminalize all substances. Yeah, I agree with you there. Jeffy Hart said, Jenny seems like the kind of parent who would introduce her kids to horror novels or scary ghost stories. Oh, I totally would. If they were into it. I wouldn't like force it on them, you know what I mean? But I mean, if I had a kid, and there's other parents out there like that where, you know, they'll be like, well, what's an age appropriate, you know, movie? Like, you could start them out like on just like innocuous shit, like fucking, you know, Hocus Pocus and shit like that. And then like once they get a little bit older, they could do like Goosebumps or whatever the fuck, or whatever's out there now. Like, I don't really know. I'm talking about like from my own generation. But I mean, I watched a lot of like scary shit when I was a kid, and you know, that wasn't too scary, but I turned out okay. I started like watching probably slasher movies and like more horror movies probably earlier than most people would imagine. Like, you know what I mean? I started like 7 or 8 or 9, and they were scary, but you know, it didn't traumatize me for life or anything like that. Like I said, I turned out like a well-adjusted human being. So, you know, and I assume
so they say.
Most people, yeah. Yeah, I don't know how well-adjusted. I think I'm kind of well-adjusted, and I mean, relatively, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Yeah, American Military 100 said, I think the Traces of Death franchise was much grislier than Faces of Death. Yeah, I remember hearing about that. Like, we kind of thought of it as like the knockoff, but I don't even remember if I ever saw those. I saw like a bunch of the Faces of Death ones, but I don't think I saw any of the Traces of Death ones. Let's see. Yeah, send me the link.
Yeah. I'm trying to find it, but I'm having connection problems.
Victor says, I've never seen A Clockwork Orange.
What?
Ooh.
Man, gotta see
that.
A
Clockwork Orange is a great film. Yeah. The book is good too, although the book is harder to get through because, you know, probably you know, but it's in like a slang, like a made-up slang called nadsat. In the movie, it's a lot easier to parse because, you know, you have the context, you can see what's happening in front of you, so it's not like so weird. And they do actually have like regular English and stuff in there too. But the book has to have a glossary in the back. I love the book also, but the movie's great though. The movie's great. I can see why it was controversial. I mean, some stuff about it is probably still controversial nowadays. I feel, well, maybe not as much as it was back then, but it's crazy like seeing it now. Because remember when we were talking about the Ken Russell movie, The Devils? Because we just reviewed that not too long ago. And that movie, I think if you made that now, like the same, with all the same content in it, I think people would still freak out about it now. Like a certain segment would freak out about it. Because it is very blasphemous. And I was actually like really, and I don't believe in that kind of stuff. Like, I don't believe in blasphemy. I don't believe that's a thing. But, you know, people would get offended by it. I think people would be very offended by that nowadays still. And the fact that they made that back in the fucking 70s, that blows my mind a little bit. Mr. 88 said, A Clockwork Orange is the only Kubrick film I like. You don't like The Shining? Interesting. Danny Rowling said, "What's Tom and Jenny's favorite video nasty film and why?" Whew. All right, I'm going to refer to my list of all of the movies because I haven't seen all of them. I do kind of want to do a thing where I watch all of them. But I'm going to say, okay, so the best ones out of the Section 1 ones, I think. A Bay of Blood, the Mario Bava one. I really like that a lot. And actually, if you haven't seen that, if you're into slasher movies, you have to see that because that is almost like the prototype of like the slasher movies. And I know a lot of people think that like Halloween, the John Carpenter one, was like, oh, the first slasher movie. That was the first one that popularized that. But A Bay of Blood is almost like watching Friday the 13th, except like a long time before Friday the 13th. You know what I mean? Like Friday the 13th Part 2 even ripped off a couple of gags from A Bay of Blood. So there's that. You know, that was 1972 that came out, I think. Or maybe even earlier. Might have been 68? No. Maybe it was 72. I can't remember. It was before Black Christmas, too, because I know Black Christmas gets called up a lot, too, as being, you know, kind of one of the early slasher movies. Driller Killer, Abel Ferrara, that's a good one too. That's another one that I've been wanting to review. That one got in big trouble because, bless you, sweetie, because the cover of that one actually showed like a drill like going into the dude's forehead, you know what I mean? And they slapped that right on the fucking cover and everybody's like, oh no, can't have that. But that's actually like a decent movie. It's honestly, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I remember it being kind of more like, it's not really a slasher movie. It's kind of more like a sleazy thriller. I like Abel Ferrara's movies. Like, Ms. 45 is probably my favorite of his. But Evil Speak was on the set, which is...
That's a good flick. I liked it.
I don't really know. Because this says... Because they have a list, and they kind of tell you, like, how much, you know, like, what list it was put on initially and, like, how much was cut out of it and blah, blah, blah. Evil Speak, it says it was released in 1987 with 3 minutes and 34 seconds cut out of it, but was re-released uncut in 2004. And I'm having a hard time. Evil Speak seemed very mild to me. I haven't seen it in a while, admittedly. We reviewed it, I don't remember, a couple years ago, maybe. What would they have taken out? 3 minutes? That's a long time. What was in there that would have been taken out? I can't think of a single thing. Like some of these I remember like that there were scenes in there like, oh yeah, I can see they probably would have taken that out. Flesh for Frankenstein. That had they actually passed it for the cinema with a couple little things cut out, but they cut out like a minute of it like in 96, but released it uncut later. The weird thing about that is that, you know, the Andy Warhol, that's the Andy Warhol's Frankenstein they call it, even though Paul Morrissey directed it. But it's weird because that is on the Video Nasties list, but Andy Warhol's Dracula, which I kind of feel like in some ways is like worse as far as like, maybe not gore, but at least like the concept behind it, they passed that without any cuts, or that wasn't like prosecuted ever. So like I said, it was like very, very arbitrary. There's a really famous story too, where when they were first... Because what initially happened, like I said, when it was just this kind of Wild West where they didn't really have a law, because now everybody's like releasing all these videotapes and they didn't have a law like saying that they had to be, you know, certified, like so anybody could just rent them. So they had this thing, and then they were coming up with all this arbitrary rules, and they were very local, so they kind of left it in the hands of like local constabularies. So like sometimes cops would come in and they'd seize this, oh, it's like that looks like a gore movie, or that looks like a porno, and they would seize it. That, you know, they'd like take it out of your store, and then it would turn out later, like there was one famous case where I can't remember what city it happened in, but like they came in and they seized The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas because they thought it was a porno movie. It's a musical with fucking Dolly Parton and Burt Reynolds in it. We reviewed it not too long ago. Yeah. It's not even smutty. Is there even boobs in it? Nope. I don't even think there's boobs in it.
No, I don't think there is.
I don't even think there's boobs in it. But it's like they just went by the title.
Yeah.
So the reason that the whole Video Nasties list came about in the first place was because people that owned video shops were like, well, you know, if you have these cops just arbitrarily coming in and like seizing shit off the shelves, we don't know what we're allowed to sell and what we're not. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, can you please just give us a list of like shit we're not allowed to sell and we'll help you out? And so that's when they came up with this list. And then like it kind of became more codified later on as they actually watched the shit and all this other kind of stuff. But House by the Cemetery is Lucio Fulci. That's a classic. You know, that was on the list as well. They cut 4 minutes out of that when they released it on video in 1988, but it was later released uncut in 2009. I mentioned I Spit on Your Grave earlier, which it's not a pleasant movie to watch, like I said, but I don't know, like I just have some kind of like weird affection for that film. I especially like the scene where she cuts that dude's dick off in the bathtub. Because I like that he just like doesn't realize it for a second. I don't know why that makes me laugh so hard, but it does. But yeah, it's a really unpleasant movie to watch. It's a rape revenge. That's a whole subgenre. But well, the weird thing, and like I made this argument, like I wrote a thing not too long ago, and I made the argument where I was like, you could argue that a movie like Deliverance is a rape revenge movie, right? I mean, there's other things going on too, but it's a rape revenge movie essentially. Ned Beatty gets raped, and his friends like fight back like against the dudes that did it. I Spit on Your Grave is also a rape revenge movie. I mean, she's out at the cabin, she's a writer, like all of these like yokels come and gang rape her, and then she systematically goes and kills them all. Like some of them cutting their dicks off first, which, you know, fair enough. So I don't understand like why Deliverance is okay, but I Spit on Your Grave isn't okay. You know what I mean? Because it's essentially the same story, I think. So I don't know. I don't know why one's allowed and not the other one's not allowed. Like I said, they did seem to give like some leeway to movies that were more like that were from more respected filmmakers, as I said. Now somebody like Ken Russell, yeah, he got some shit for like The Devils and stuff, but The Devils, I mean, is a pretty, even by today's standards, is pretty out there. Like you'd have a hard time nowadays showing a movie that had like groups of nuns like fucking a statue of Jesus, okay? Like people would still have a hard time with that nowadays. But I don't know, like it just seems like I don't know. I don't understand like what the whole shit was. And the thing about it, like I said, and I was talking earlier about like Salò, 120 Days of Sodom, which had a lot of cuts, but they seemed like they were more willing to give that one some leeway because the dude was trying to make a point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they thought, oh, well, it had artistic merit, even though they did tell him it's like, can we please take out the shit eating and all that kind of stuff? Although you can see it uncut nowadays. Although I don't want to watch that. I've watched it once and I was just like, yeah, okay.
Okay, Mango, I was trying to find the original post. I found one of them. All right. There isn't any. I can say it. Yeah, I can say it. Go on X Hamster. All right, and just go goddess masturbates again in a church. She's made several of them, and it will come up. But that's not the original post. All right. You can't see anything there, but that's it. And she's got like 2 or 3 like that. I remember when the original came. It's an amateur, and she was making money out of a German site, kind of like their version of OnlyFans. That's where it came from. A couple years, I guess about 5-6 years ago, she probably had about 20 videos. But that chick there, man, fucking trip. There's another one on there just says risky masturbation. Also not an original post, but on that you'll be able to find out where it came from originally. I'm sure she's still around, but that's not the original. That's just what I can find right now. Jenny about ready to come back, but she was the church girl. Good old church girl. Okay.
you talking?
I don't have to.
What do you mean you don't have to?
Because I just got a message from Mary Lynn.
Thank you, Mango.
Thanks very much, Mango.
The BBFC and Furman hated Fulci. They pretty much banned all his movies. Yeah, I think they banned all his movies, and I think if you had Cannibal in the title of your movie, they just automatically, they didn't even watch that shit. They were just like, yep, nope, not allowed. Not allowed. Ben says, an Australian writer got raided by the cops in the 80s for something, and they seized his VHS tapes marked as the young ones, convinced they'd busted a CP operation. See, that's what I mean. You can't really have people that don't know jack shit about horror regulating horror films. They don't know what they're looking at. You know what I'm saying? And it's just kind of like, I was reading this article earlier, and like the guy, I'm kind of like paraphrasing. I think it was Kim Newman that wrote it, actually, but I could be wrong about that. But you know, he's kind of a famous like horror guy. And he was saying, you know, it's it's an easy moral stance to take to condemn shit that you don't care about or that you don't know anything about. And I kind of feel like that very succinctly like summed up this whole era. As I said, they were obviously trying to scapegoat. It's an easy thing to scapegoat. I mean, it's shit that kids like, or people that, you know, are seen as like degenerates or weirdos, like particularly back then, like if you were into horror, like people thought there was something the matter with you. So, you know, it was a really easy thing to blame, you know. Well, obviously these kids are messed up or rioting or whatever it is they're doing because they saw this movie where somebody got their head cut off, and it's all that kind of stuff. It's just like an easy thing to blame because it's simpler. People like simple solutions. They don't really like the reality that shit is a lot more complicated, you know, and things have like a lot more complicated, you know, reasons than normal. Okay, so, Slasher Fred said at the end of Deliverance, the dream sequence where the hand rises, inspired many movies like Carrie or Friday the 13th. Yeah, I feel like that was like a big thing. Ben said spoilers. I don't know what I said that was spoilers. What about I Spit on Your Grave? Did she cut the dude's dick off?
Make you another drink.
Yeah. Ben says, these pornographers need Jesus. Here's the thing. And this is a generalization. This is anecdotal. Just from my experience. What I have found in my 50 years on Earth is that people who are really into horror movies, like they're really into, you know, all that kind of stuff, like they go to conventions and stuff like that, 99% of those people are the fucking nicest people you will ever meet in your whole entire life. My theory about that is that they get their darkness out by watching fake shit. Like, they enjoy fake shit. Like, I definitely, like, get, you know, kind of the thing. So I don't have to be, like, a shithead. I don't have to be, like, you know, dark in real life, because you watch all this stuff like that. So most people, I would say like 99% of people that I've ever met that were super, super into horror were like the nicest people ever. Conversely, people who are really, really uptight, who really, really don't like horror, who are really like condemn people who like horror, who try to be really morally upstanding about, I go to church and I'll do this or that or the other. 99% of those people are terrible, horrible people who have skeletons in their closet big time. This is, like I said, it's not true across the board. This is just my experience. Because they have shit to hide. I kind of feel like people that are into horror, they're just like wearing that shit on their sleeve, like letting their freak flag fly. And so they don't have anything to hide. They're not trying to be anything that they're not. Whereas people who are trying to appear normal or upstanding or, you know, super religious or whatever, I always like distrust people like that, because I'm like, well, what are you trying to cover up then? Like, why can't you just be a regular ass person, you know, and just like what you like? So, you know, and I'm not saying across the board, like I said, because I've met some like super, super religious people, super, super conservative people that were lovely, lovely people. But in general, you know, if they're real weird about people liking horror and stuff like that, they've got some shit going on, you know. And it's probably bad, like probably way worse than anything that I could think of, you know. Mango said, yep, just like the nuns and the devils. Yeah, because the more you repress that kind of shit, the more it's going to come out in real freaky ways. Real freaky. So if you just admit that, you know, yeah, I got some like fucked up thoughts or fucked up ideas, but it's like as long as I don't act like it's okay, and if you have like an outlet for dealing with that, then you're going to be a lot better, like nicer, more well-adjusted person than somebody that's trying to portray themselves in a specific way and they're not that specific way. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of feel like that's my whole thing about it. And that was the main problem, as I said, that I had. I'm not saying that like all the people, you know, that were on the board of censors, I'm sure most of them were like just fine, but I just didn't like the way that they came at it. That they came at it that, you know, we can watch these movies and it's like, oh, we're outraged and we're horrified by all of this kind of stuff. But they didn't really seem like they tried to understand why anybody would want to watch that or why anybody would want to enjoy that. Because they didn't enjoy it and they really seemed like they couldn't put themselves into someone else's shoes and understand like why somebody else might like to watch that kind of thing. Yeah, like they couldn't, so it's like a lack of empathy in some ways. They're like, oh, well, I'm this way, so everyone else should be this way. And I've known a lot of people like that.
Yeah, solipsism,
I can't imagine. It's like, I wouldn't want everybody to be like me for oh, God forbid. You know what I mean? It's just like, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But, you know what I mean? It's just kind of like, look, I'm super into like fucking horror movies and punk rock and shit like that, but I don't think other people should be into that. So if you don't like it, that's cool. Like, we can still hang out, we can still talk and everything like that, as long as you don't get all fucking up in my grill about, oh, I shouldn't like this, that, and the other thing. I think that's why I was so mad. It's a lot better now, because most people are just kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever, like what you like, especially since the advent of the internet, and you can, like, find whatever you want. So you can find your own people, and you can find your niche and stuff. So I think that's a lot better, but, like, when I was growing up, especially being a girl, I do kind of feel like in the 80s, like, it was weirder, like, for a girl to be into horror. Especially, I mean, even where I grew up, I don't know if it was like that in other places, but where I grew up, like, people, they didn't really like that boys were into horror. They thought you were going to be a serial killer, but they especially thought it was strange if you were a girl. They thought you were just like fucking Satan incarnate. John Smith said, yep, uptight people are repressing a lot of stuff. Grindr goes through the roof whenever Republicans have conventions. It does. It's like, that's what I mean. It's like they're trying to portray a certain facade, and you know that there's shit going on behind that. It's just like, just be a freak. It's fine. It's like everyone's fine with it nowadays. You don't have to like hide anything. You don't have to like pretend to be something you're not. As long as you're not hurting anybody, as long as everyone's consenting, just be into what you're into. It's fine. Be a furry. Be whatever. It's like, it's fine. Nobody cares. Just don't try to be a specific thing. Don't try to like be normal. There's no such thing. No such thing. One of these days you should watch.
I'm gonna fucking go ahead and counter that though. There is normal. Normal is basic as shit. There's a lot of that going on at the biker bar up there. You know, they're cool and everything, but they're just at a certain cultural place. Well, I understand it, though. You know what I mean? But they're within a certain bandwidth, and that's it. Very few of them are going to step outside that bandwidth.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I kind of like dealt with that a lot too, because I grew up in a very biker, rednecky kind of milieu.
And I would consider them actually like normal. They don't consider themselves normal. They think they're fucking.
They think they're crazy.
Real crazy. But I'm like, no, man, you're mundane. But you know, you're cool. But it's a very kind of like rural farm. It's kind of like the dark side of the fucking rural country. Yeah. Mentality. They listen
but it's not. They're not that weird though.
They're not that weird. They're into all.
They think they're weird, but they're not.
They are, but they're just real fucking basic mundane tastes, you know.
I don't even know what I would consider weird. Like, and I'm not talking about just weird and like, you know, obviously if you're a fucking serial killer or something, like that's bad. That's not weird. That's fucked up. Get out of the human race. Yeah. But other than that, like, I'm not really sure what I consider weird. Like, if I was talking to somebody and they said, "Hey, I'm really into like some bizarre ass thing," I'd be like, "All right." Yeah. As long as it wasn't like hurting anybody. Like, what? It's none of my business, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't understand like why people get upset about what other people are doing in their own houses. As long as they're not hurting anybody, and as long as everybody's an adult and everyone's consenting, I was like, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Like I said, get your freak on. It doesn't affect me in the slightest. Doesn't affect me in the slightest.
Yeah, it's like some of the shit I hear younger people fucking complaining about on YouTube today about identity and gender identity and shit like that. To me, that's all fucking kind of faux pas-ish, you know what I mean? That's kind of like, what? Just do what you want to do. Why are you making a big deal out of it?
The thing about it, I think what that is because we're kind of used to, like I said, we grew up in the goth scene. A lot of people didn't.
Yeah.
And so I kind of feel like for us, it's not as big a deal, but for them, it's a bigger deal because...
It's a big deal for you that you're
Well,
gay
it was
or
a bigger
whatever.
deal.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, like, for a long time, like, the mainstream culture was not accepting of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's, they're kind of coming to the thing of where it's like, oh, it's okay now, so they can come out and talk about it. Like, for us, it's kind of like old hat.
That was like 30 years ago.
Well, for us, it's old
Yeah.
hat, but like I
Yeah.
said, the mainstream, like, if you'd come out, look, and some people here might know, because, like, some people here are as old as us.
Yeah.
I mean, if you came out as gay, like, back then, like, in my high school, you'd have got your ass beat.
Yeah.
And I knew a guy that got his ass beat for that very reason.
Yeah, well, high school's kind of fucked up anyway.
Well, yeah, but it's fucked up for everybody. I'm just saying that it's like, well, and actually, I knew a straight guy that got his ass beat for wearing eyeliner.
It depends on where you were.
80s.
It depends on where you were. Me and Grampters, fucking in high school, Trenton High in Michigan, it was very middle class, upper middle class, working class. It was just like something out of Back to the Future. Like the high school that fucking Marty McFly went to. You know, it was a good school. It's the way most American schools should be, but it's kind of generic in a way, but in a good way. It was kind of universal. We had gays there. Nobody fucked with them. You know? I could see how maybe in the Bible Belt, maybe.
Well, and like I said, I grew up in a really rednecky.
Areas.
I grew up in a real rednecky
rural
town.
areas. But
so if you looked a little bit weird, you were gonna get your ass beat.
But most of America, I think most of America was kind of like in high school, closer to what me and Grampers were in. We had gays, we had lesbians. Nobody gave a shit. They were kind of out. You could tell lesbian girls. You knew who the lesbians were. You knew who the gay dudes were. Nobody really cared. Not at that.
Well,
school.
in a way, you were kind of like lucky because not where I was.
So I didn't really have those prejudices.
Not where I was.
And I wasn't around a bunch of people. Most of America really wasn't like that. The South is different. Is very different, especially if you start talking about areas where there were a lot of poverty. They're fucking tough, and they're conformist as fuck.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
that's kind of what I was dealing with.
Real conformist.
You wore, seriously, if you wore like regular clothes in the 80s, you could wear regular clothes if you have black nail polish on.
Yeah.
Everybody freaked out.
Yeah, and what was weird is that what she's describing is more conformist than what was going on, say, like in Heidelberg and Laurel, Mississippi, because the population density wasn't high enough to have conformity. You know,
There weren't enough people to conform to.
for conformity. All right, so it's very different than what she's talking about. The high school kids in Laurel, Mississippi, listening to the fucking Violent Femmes and fucking cool new wave music and shit like that. There wasn't, and early Cure. That was real common.
See, I knew like 10 people that were into that, and we were the weirdos.
Right, and one of those people was Parker Posey. You guys know her as Parker Posey. She was in Blade 3. She's a friend of mine. It's from Laurel, Mississippi. She grew up there, but her family wasn't from there. She came from a Yankee family. Her dad owned Chris Posey Chevrolet, who was downtown Laurel. And she listened to The Cure, Violent Femmes, and fucking Joy Division, and we were. This was high school era. This is before they all went off to college and everything, and we were having fucking fun, man. And they were goth kids in Laurel, Mississippi, tiny, and their parents were all upper middle class. You had rednecks and shit, but they just weren't around. You didn't never see them, and
Pretty much all I saw was
yeah,
rednecks.
and they wouldn't pick on that crowd because they didn't have the money to. Their parents all worked for their parents, so, and it wasn't real. Mississippi, like I said, didn't have enough population density for anybody to make anything. My first wife was from Gulfport, and I can show you. I'll show her to you. She was goth as shit. I left Boston. Fucking the Man Ray scene, which was like one of the best goth clubs in the United States at that time, and I met Tiff, and Tiff would have blown anybody in New York away. Or even Boston away. And she was from fucking Gulfport. And it was just because fucking there wasn't enough people to make anybody conform to anything in Mississippi. Shit, where is that?
John Gora said, juvenile delinquents are drawn to certain media, but they're juvenile delinquents first. Yeah, I think that's another thing. And I think, getting back to the video nasties thing is I think one of the things, and this was a little bit of a later iteration. This was like more late 80s, early 90s. But there was the whole James Bulger thing, which, I think we did a show about that. Like those two little boys that led that other little boy. Off in it and then killed him with a rock or whatever. And they got that whole thing got associated with Child's Play 3 as though that movie had made those little boys do that. Like they made a huge deal about that. So Child's Play 3, which is not even that that graphic of a movie or anything, but it got kind of tied to that crime for all that.
That was Mississippi in the 90s, just out in the middle of nowhere, that girl. That was Michelle, though. So it's just not you can't really, stereotypes don't really hold up in certain areas of the United States, But that's Mississippi, of all places. That's TIFF, right there. So it's just, it all depends on where you grew up. But Daytona had a higher population, so they were making you be a certain way.
Yeah. And if you were just even a little bit different, because I didn't think from my point of view, I didn't think I looked that weird, but I guess from their point of view,
we would walk around all gothed out, fucking and fucking out in the middle of nowhere in Mississippi, and people would go, "Hey, wow!" The people would just trip out.
Yeah, I didn't.
There was no attacks or anything. They wouldn't attack you.
No, we got picked on all.
I'd get more shit in Boston
all the time.
I'd get more shit in Boston.
And like I said, okay, I'll admit, in high school, I had army boots. Yeah, I had a $1 trench coat that I got from a thrift store, and I just wore band shirts and shit like that. And yeah, I had half my head shaved. All right, yeah. But I admit it. But that's the thing. It's to me, that didn't look that weird. It's it wasn't as weird as I would have liked to look, maybe. But it's you still, even when I was in junior high, when you first started doing it's oh, I'm gonna color in my my nails with a black marker, because it was harder to get black nail polish back then. You had to wait till Halloween and then you had to stock up because they didn't sell it all year. So you would color them in with a black marker and it'd be ew, what are you doing? What is that? Why? What is this tape that you're listening to? Who's The Cure? Who's that? It was that. You know what I mean? Which is crazy to think about nowadays, because now every fucking basic bitch in the world is out there dancing to The Cure when they play them at the club.
Well, it's funny that they were doing that. What year was that?
Well, junior high was mid to late 80s. Okay. Well, high school was 88, 89, 89.
Okay, so it's early, all right. That's Tiff's high school.
That was my high school.
That was Tiff's high school, one of her high school shots. That's around 94.
So that was later than me.
So it's later. Okay, now that would have been Mississippi.
I graduated in 1990.
Mississippi, 94. You had girls like that in a high school photo shoot.
But see, that's the thing, though, because after 1991, that was, what do they call that? The year punk broke. Yeah. That was after Nirvana. That was after the big alternative music grunge kind of thing, where suddenly it was cool to be alternative, in the 90s. Prior to that, like I said, I graduated from high school in 1990, so that was before that happened. Prior to that, if you were into weird shit, nobody knew what that was, really. At least not where I lived. They didn't know where that was.
Danny's trying to get me to tell the fucking story about the girl was jerking off the horse or pretending to. Yeah. Why do you want me to tell that story?
What?
That was California.
Well, that was just that porno we saw, right?
No.
Or no,
he's talking about. He's talking about. Her name was Debbie McLeod. I believe it was Debbie McLeod was her name. Or something or other McLeod was her last name. It was one of my mom's friends. This is back in the late 70s at the fucking stable. She was sitting there with a cigarette in her fucking mouth washing her horse. This is all horse girls. And there's some teenage girls were walking by, and they were drinking too. They were drinking prototype wine coolers. I remember them. And her horse, who was gelded, it wasn't a stallion, it was gelded, it fucking popped a boner, and she grabbed that shit, was shaking it at her friends as they were walking by, and they were all fucking laughing. That's what he's talking about.
So that's not really, I mean, that's not like really that, like that porno that we saw with the girl and the dog.
No.
That was just kind of like you were just doing it to fuck around.
Yeah, she was doing it for fucking. She was washing the horse. It was
Right.
it was in
That's
it
what
was,
I mean.
it was in the wash rack. There's a fucking thing that they
Yeah,
walk
I
in
know.
there.
Yeah, I know.
It was in the wash rack, and the fucking she was down there, and she was cleaning the sheath on the horse. You know, fucking sprayed it because you know their dick's got to come out, and there's fucking crust in there, and they got to fucking pull out dead skin and shit. She was cleaning the fucking
Dick
horse's
crust.
sheath. Yeah, dick crust and shit.
You heard it here first.
They're not circumcised, you know. And horse fucking rocked up and shit, and she's going, "Hey, look at this shit! Look at this shit!" And she's calling her teenage friends, you know. She was probably about 22. And they're all these 16, 17. She goes, "Imagine that shit!" You know what I mean? And I was fucking blown away. I was embarrassed as hell.
You would probably die.
I was embarrassed as hell. I was probably like 8 or 9 when I saw that. But for some reason, I thought she was intensely sexy with that fucking thing. Yeah. I was about 8 or 9. I was like,
That might be a fetish that you have.
it must be. I don't know. I was just like,
Girls with horse
I was
dicks.
just fucking totally blown away. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I
Maybe
was the
just...
only male in the area. I was 8, so they were blowing me off like I wasn't there. 8 or 9, and I was just
Well, just
mine was fucking blown.
maybe you didn't realize that like girls would actually do some gross shit like that.
Yeah.
Like to like fuck with each other.
Yeah,
which
they were
totally
fucking each other.
will.
Imagine that shit.
Girls are gross too.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know, like if you.
Yeah, she had a cigarette hanging out of her mouth.
Girls are gross too.
Imagine that shit going up in you, and they were fucking laughing and shit. And she's like fucking wagging that shit, fucking smacking it. It's fucking funny, you know.
Yeah,
Horse girls, man, they're fucking crazy.
I thought you said all girls were crazy.
No, horse girls. I've had these girls fucking friend me on here from the show, and they're looking. They got pictures of them, and they're fucking equestrian horses. They're all English equestrian riders, because you know my family came from that background. My mother was a pretty famous trainer and all that. She was a California national state champion for like '78, I think, in fucking equitation. She wasn't jumping, but she was in equitation. She went. She was the champion for that year, if I remember correctly. Either that or was the runner-up. I think champion. So, she wrote a bunch of books on it as she got older. And I grew up in the horse industry off and on. I mean, I gotta go back to fucking horse barns. In this area, fucking, I managed a barn for fucking 2 years, huh? I think we knew each other when that was. Anna Leita was living with me at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think I knew you then. Like, I don't know how long you've been
before
doing
we
it
were
when
a
I met
thing.
you.
Me and Leita were living together.
Yeah.
And at the barn, and I ran that barn. And no, when the clients, girls that like horses and shit, are fucking nuts. With that, not in a bad way. Most of them are all right. They have certain things about them, and they have money and they're crazy. They're boy crazy too.
Well, okay.
Yeah, they are.
Let's see. Okay, so Mango says, this is something I said a long time ago. You're right, Jenny. I have friends who are diehard horror fans like me, and they're very nice, even though we may not agree on politics and other things. Horror brings us together. Yeah, honestly, like I said, I can't really think of that many people that I've met that are super, super into horror, like geeks about horror and stuff. Most of these people are super, super nice. Because, as I said, you're wearing your darkness, you're wearing your weirdness, like, for everybody to see. You're not trying to hide anything. You're not trying to be something you're not. So you don't have that, like, the insecurity of, oh, like, they're going to find out what I'm really like, or that I'm really weird, or something like that. You're like, yeah, I'm weird. Deal with it. You know, and that tends to, like, make you, like, more chill. And Mr. 88 said, genuinely good people do not have to advertise. Yeah, the second you start coming out and being like, I'm such an awesome person, I'm such a nice person, I'm like, yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
Like, if you really were, you wouldn't have to say that. You wouldn't have to say that. Like, everybody would just know, and other people would say.
Yeah, the woman in church fucking standing up screaming about how whorish everybody is. She's the whore.
Exactly.
She's the whore.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is one thing I remember, like, growing up in Florida. I remember this one guy. This is probably like in the late 80s, because I was absurdly, like, weirdly, morbidly fascinated by, like, televangelists and, like, all these, like, weird fundamentalist Christian kind of things that were going on at the time. Because, like I said, it was still very much Satanic Panic era, which I thought was, like, kind of horrifying and hilarious at the same time. And there was this one guy, he was some kind of legislator in Florida. What the fuck? I can't remember like what his exact position was. I think it's, what was his name? Tanner? John Tanner? Something like that. And his big crusade was pornography. And that was not just like child porn, which, yeah, you know, don't do child porn, obviously. But it was just pornography in general. And I was like, that dude's going to get busted with like the world's biggest pornography because nobody cares that much about just like regular ass porn than somebody that's like trying to like front. You know what I'm saying? Why do you care that much about it? Well, it's just kind of like all of the, like, I don't know, like any kind of politician that comes out and like talks about it, it's like, oh, these like, you know, trans people are going to be like coming in the bathrooms and blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, yeah, that's, somebody is like way too worried about some shit and like might have some issues that they need to address because nobody in their right mind cares that much about other people's sexuality. If you do, then you might need to do some self-examination.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of the same kind of thing as people that say, I watched a horror movie and, you know, it's like all depraved and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, maybe you need to like examine why you felt that way watching it because most people don't. Most people are just seeing it as entertainment or watching it as like a piece of art or something going, oh, look at those cool like special effects or something like that. It's like nobody is like, ooh, now it wants to make me be a serial killer. If it does, then you have problems. Other problems. It's not the movie's fault. It's you.
Yeah.
It's you. Just, you know, just telling you. But yeah. So where was I? I don't know. Like I'm talking about like all these notes. Like I said, we're kind of talking about the shit.
Yeah.
Slasher Fred said, one of these days you should watch and review the 1977 underrated classic, The Car. We have reviewed that. We did a double feature. I believe it was The Car and was it Race with the Devil? It was another, like, vehicular horror movie. I'm pretty sure it was Race with the Devil. But I think we did that as a double feature, and it was probably, I want to say it was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. But it might have been longer, because, you know, time doesn't mean anything to me anymore.
Somebody asked to see a high school picture of me. I'll show them. I got long hair and short hair.
American Military 100 said, can each of you show a picture of yourselves from high school?
Yeah.
I don't have, you know what? I don't have one available, but, I could find one, and maybe I'll do it.
Arrange that.
I'll do it on the, if I remember. Actually, I'll write it down.
Yeah.
I'll do it on the Friday night show because I don't have one like at the moment. But I don't think I have any on my Facebook either. I might have some that are like hidden. But...
That's me, probably about
Look
16.
at this Rick Springfield.
Yeah, with my Rick, 15, 16, around that time. That's high school.
Did you wish you had Jesse's girl?
Man, I did have Jesse's girl. And the mom.
Okay. Let me see.
Mango says Race with the Devil is great. It is great, and was not banned in the UK.
That's me as a senior. Come on.
You just look all white.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Adriana said, New Orleans, for some reason, when I was a preteen and teen, seemed like the goth capital of the United States.
Yeah.
I think that was mostly Anne Rice's fault.
Yeah, we living in Mississippi. That's where we partied every weekend. Fucking down French Quarter, go to fucking the fucking Hellfire Club and the Crystal. That's back when Pierre had the Hellfire Club.
Danny Rowling said, looking like Uncle Jesse from Full House. Yeah, that too.
Yeah,
that too.
Yeah. The thing is that most goths didn't live there. Me, my ex-wife, and our friends, we lived there. We were regulars. Everybody else were tourists. They were only there for like the weekend. So you'd see goths from all over the fucking world come through there. And they'd have fucking convergence there and everything. But the thing is, like I said, it was the capital, but they didn't live there. They just would come visit. It was a tourist town.
So he says, your high school photo, you look like you could be in one of today's boy bands.
Yeah.
The crowd screaming after you.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a little handsome motherfucker.
Yeah, I was fucking pretty. I was
his,
pretty shit.
His pretty feathered hair.
Yeah.
That was, a lot of dudes had that hair, though. Back then.
That was actually kind of gothic. Andrew Eldritch had that haircut, too.
He did.
Just
you
a
had
little
the
bit
same,
longer.
You had Andrew Eldritch hair from Sisters of Mercy.
Yep.
Which nowadays, it'd probably
Yeah,
be called
that's
a mullet.
Yeah.
But
that's what Andrew had.
a lot of new wave like bands had that. We didn't call it a mullet back then. It didn't become a rednecky thing until later, I think.
Yeah.
I don't remember it really being a rednecky thing until maybe the 90s.
Yeah.
Is that right? I mean, it's been a while.
90s.
It was a long time.
90s, it became a mullet.
Yeah, and then it was like a rednecky thing. Like fucking Joe Dirt and stuff. But
They
prior
were
to that,
behind,
like...
they were behind in the fashion by a decade or so.
I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
I think, like, they only just caught up with, like,
Yeah.
the new wave trend, like,
Yeah.
10, 15 years later. Like, after it had already, like, passed by.
By the time the 90s rolled around, short hair was in for dudes, for the most part. And if you had long hair, you had parts of it that were shaved out. So it was a mixture.
Well, I kind of feel like, well, the 90s, too, because they had the whole grunge thing, and they had, like, the whole, like,
You could have a
goth
mop
metal
top.
thing. You could have, like, well, you
Yeah.
could have, like, just, like, straight long
Yeah.
hair like this.
Dreads.
You could have that. Or dreads, yeah, that
Yeah.
was big, too. I remember,
Even
like, some
Billy
people-
Idol got dreads.
I remember that.
From the
Like,
Cyberpunk album.
White people dreads.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that being a bit of a thing. I remember that being a bit of a thing. So, yeah, so where was I? Like I said, I'm just kind of like hopping all over because this is kind of like a broad topic. But, okay, so as I mentioned, the only law that they had regulating stuff, they did have like they already had like not necessarily a censorship arm, but it was kind of like the MPAA. They would like they'd be like, well, if you cut this and that, you'll get this certain rating. So they had that had been around since like 1912. But because they didn't have a law, about videotape, there was like a few years where kind of pretty much anything went, and for a while anything did. And for a few years, like shit just kind of went under the radar because, no one like really thought to get all that upset about it, and it hadn't really like seeped into the public consciousness, I feel like. So nobody had a freak out about it until early 1982. And that's when the people behind the UK distribution of the movie The Driller Killer, which, like I said, is Abel Ferrara, who's a New York filmmaker who's made like some pretty... The Driller Killer is good, but Ms. 45 is my favorite. But yeah, so they were... that was a 1979 film. And they were trying to sell the movie, obviously, because they're trying to make money off it. So they take out this full-page ad in a bunch of like video magazines. And this ad showed, a very iconic image from the movie, which is essentially like somebody like putting a drill into somebody's forehead, and it's like pretty graphic and shit. Like that's obviously not real, but you know what I mean. It's a pretty like striking image. So because this ad kind of like got around, people started bitching about it and crying, and they started complaining to a body they had over there called the Advertising Standards Agency. So there was that. So I kind of feel like at that point, like stuff started getting more, people started being more aware of it. Oh my God, this stuff is out there and it's unregulated, and maybe we should do something about that. And then a couple months after that, this other company that was distributing Cannibal Holocaust, which we talked about before, they decided that they were going to send an anonymous letter to Mary Whitehouse, who was she was in this thing called like the National Viewers and Listeners Association. So they thought that they could drum up more publicity by like writing to her anonymously and complaining about their own movie. What ended up happening though was that, I mean, as funny as that is, it kind of worked, but then it also kind of backfired. Because it ended up that Mary Whitehouse was so incensed by the existence of these that she essentially like spearheaded, I don't know if she like spearheaded, but she definitely became like the face of it. She basically like became like at the forefront of, we needed to do something about these unregulated, like these, this filth that's proliferating like in the UK and like corrupting the youth and everything. So she started off this whole big public campaign, and I think she might have been the one that coined the term video nasty. As I said, nasty referring to like kind of like smut or violence in book form. Like I said, like kind of the paperback that had been in use, I think, since the 1970s. Like particularly talk about stuff like, kind of like the paperback horror, like pulp horror, kind of like James Herbert or something like that. That had been referred to by that term before. Like I said, like Nazi exploitation or shit like that. So it had been used in that sense. But I think she was the one that put video and nasty together, like, and that became a thing. So yeah, and then that point, like later that year, like in summer of 1982, there was basically this really big article that came out I think it was the Sunday Times, and it came out, and it was called How High Street Horror is Invading the Home, and it was kind of like informing everybody in the UK. It's like, hey, these movies are unregulated, so it's like little kids can just toddle down to the fucking corner shop and rent them, and there's all kind of like horrible shit in there, like Cannibal Holocaust. So we needed to do something about this, and it became like a big, huge fucking deal. And as I said, like the Daily Mail really got on board with that because, like I said, it probably sold papers. Their whole thing is outrage anyway. I think they're like kind of still around. Actually, when I was over there, they said everybody I bet they said they either called it the Daily Fail or the Daily Heil. That's what they called it over there. But yeah, so I mean, everybody I knew, that's what they called it over there. So they were kind of on the forefront of the shit too, like just printing shit about these movies all the time. And they were blaming these movies for pretty much everything. Like every time there was like, oh, there was an increase in crime. Oh, these video nasties. It's like they're the ones life is cheap and the kids are watching these and blah, blah, blah. Even though, like I said, probably, I don't know. I kind of feel like you said, when I was a little kid, I really liked horror movies. I probably saw some shit that I maybe shouldn't have seen, like earlier than I should have seen it, but I think most kids do that because they're curious. Yeah. You're curious. And it's like, it doesn't traumatize you for life or anything. It's like, if it's real scary or fucked up, it might give you like nightmares or like, some stress or something like that, but it's not going to like warp your whole entire fucking personality, for Christ's sake.
I think it should scare you.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about being scared.
I would honestly advocate for, I'm a big fan, like, I don't want to like traumatize kids for life, but I'm a big advocate. I think most kids, it depends on the kid. It depends on the individual kid. You know your own kid better than anyone else. But when I was a kid, I really liked scary shit. Like, I was attracted to that kind of thing. I think a lot of kids are attracted to that kind of stuff. And I think that as a parent, I don't think there's anything wrong with letting them explore that. I think it's probably good. I think it's healthy. Because it's like, look, the real world is kind of fucked up. I think that's what Grimm's fairy tales were all about. That's what I'm saying. It's like, like protect your kid as much as you can. It's like, don't tell them like the most horrible shit. Like it has to be age appropriate. I'm not saying, like I said, you show like a Serbian film to like a fucking 5-year-old. That would be terrible. But I'm just saying that, within the age range, I think it's healthy for them to learn that scary shit happens sometimes. Bad things happen to good people sometimes. You know what I mean? And just kind of introduce that to them slowly. And I think scary movies is a good way of doing that because it's a safe way of doing that. I kind of feel like, I don't know, and like I said, this isn't true across the board, but I kind of feel like kids that grew watching scary shit, not super scary because, I didn't watch anything like really, really horrible until I was like 8 or 9 or 10 maybe. Like then I started watching slasher movies and they scared me, but not for long. Like after a while, it's fake. You know what I mean? But I really liked scary stuff, ghost stories and all that kind of stuff when I was really little. But I kind of feel like it helps you deal with reality a little bit better. Yeah. Because you're already used to, fucked up shit happens. Yeah. Like, so it's a lot easier for you to deal with the real world.
Make it mentally tougher.
Bad shit happens to you and stuff like that. Like I said, it's age appropriate. Introduce. But, if you're really into horror and you have kids and you kind of want to get them into it, then, there's a lot of resources nowadays where there's like kind of age appropriate horror. Like, yeah, introduce it slowly.
Start with the Universal monsters.
Yeah, start with something like that that's not like super scary.
That's what I started on.
And there's stuff like
Dracula, Frankenstein.
Nowadays, like what, or from my era, stuff like The Gate or like from 1987 or The Lady in White or something like that, which is scary. It's like a ghost story. Actually, The Lady in White was like a murder mystery too. But, it was scary, but it wasn't, like, so scary that, like, kids would be fucking traumatized for life or anything like that.
Today's kid probably bored as hell by fucking the old Dracula and stuff. Probably too slow for him. I don't know.
Yeah, because that's the thing. A lot of them are, like, really talky, which might not... And that's the thing. It's funny, too, because I was watching a documentary earlier.
I loved them, but they didn't have any choice when I was a kid back in the 70s.
Yeah, you didn't really have a lot of... I mean, nowadays, there's, like, so much competition.
And you're watching them by yourself, you know what I mean? You're fucking sitting on the floor in front of the television.
I could see how some images of them would still be scary, but like I feel like in the aggregate, and the funny thing was like I was watching a documentary about video nasties earlier, and like one of the guys on there that had grown up during that era, and he's like, yeah, it's like, he's like in some ways like exactly what Mary Whitehouse and all the fucking old biddies and stuff like that were like afraid would happen. It's like, yeah, the parents would go out to the pub or whatever, and then we'd sneak out to the corner shop and like rent some horror movies. But he's like, the thing about it was like that, everybody would talk about, oh, this is the worst one and this is so fucked up. It's like most of the time you'd rent them, it's like most of the time they were just boring.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you're trying to like fast forward through like, where's the fucked up shit?
The best slasher for kids is Terror Train, because it's not very graphic. I don't think they ever show anybody actually get killed, do they?
Wait, do they? In Terror Train?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, people get killed. A lot of people get killed.
But I don't think they actually show it. I think
they show the aftermath.
Yeah, and they don't.
But
really
that happened in a lot of slasher movies.
Yeah, they don't show anybody being killed. I don't even think there's much blood in it, but they show the dead body.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a fucking, like a Suspiria situation where you see a like knife going into like an actual open heart. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I think I saw that around 13 or 14, maybe 13 when I saw it. And I liked it because it scared me, because your imagination would run away with you. But it never repelled me from, like, gore. And then later I saw Friday the 13th. And I thought that shit was gory. But I go back and look at it. There's not much in Friday the 13th. It's not as gory as I remembered it.
It's surprising. And we have like we have the whole collection, and we have like the unrated ones, and I was like, wow, this is like way tamer than I remembered.
Yeah, there's
like nothing in there.
Something about the score and the settings, that being out at night at Camp Crystal Lake. Although I remember liking the second one much better. The second and the third one.
I did too. Second one's the best one, I would argue.
I think the second one's the best one out of them all.
I think we've said that before, but yeah, I think Friday the 13th the part 2 is the best one out of the series, I think.
The second one was, for me, when that came out, that was fucking heavy. I was like, whoa. You know what I mean? Whoa, that fucking make your heart fucking go and shit. Man, that's some sick shit, man.
That's like his soul leaving his body gesture.
Trying to stop my astral projection.
That's what happens. That's what happens at the club. That's how we know when he's drunk, because he starts going like that. Like he's coming to join you, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm like, is your soul leaving your body?
Start crumpling up before doing this. But
I think I teased him about that at Mannequins. I was like, are you going to join Elizabeth?
Yeah, and then Angel came over and started trying to hold my soul. And Angel's our friend. She's our friend. And
because I said you were going to join Elizabeth.
Yeah, and then I was just the second one, when you get to Jason's lair. And he's got the sweater.
And
his
the head.
mom's sweater and the head. Yeah.
And then she, like, put the sweater on.
I
was like, man, that's fucked up.
Yeah, it was
it's, like, gross.
In that day, I was
like, she's hardcore.
As you're watching all this horror stuff unravel, that was some big shit. If you were fucking 13, 14, when that was happening. Maybe I might have been a little bit younger, actually. I have a hard time remembering how old I was. That was what?
Friday the 13th 2 was 81?
81.
82. Well, I think the first one came out in 1980, right?
Yeah, so I was about 13, 14, around that time.
And I'm pretty sure they came out like pretty much every year.
About 13.
So I think it was 81.
Yeah, and I was fucked up by that, but in a good way. I was like, I'd think about it, And I would see that. I saw that in the summer when I was visiting my dad up in Mississippi. And it looks like that, it's rural. So you're always thinking maybe you might see Jason looking into the house through the window.
You never know; it could happen.
Yeah, or you're outside.
Some weirdo could like put on a fucking hockey mask. You know what's weird though? It's like, as much as I love horror, and I love all kinds of horror. Like, I'll watch anything. I don't give a shit. Like, I like some subgenres more than others, but I'm not picky. Like, I'll just pretty much I'll give anything a shot. But if something's gonna like legit scare me, it's gonna be like supernatural. It's gonna be like a ghost story. Slasher movies and home invasion horror and stuff like that, like a lot of those I really like them, but for whatever reason they don't scare me, even though those could totally happen, and like the ghost story shit totally can't. I don't understand why that is, and I've tried to like figure it out, and I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, wow, the Daily Mail was already like that 40 years ago. Yeah, I kind of feel like that's their whole business model. I mean, that was kind of the whole thing back then. They were really on the forefront of this campaign against the video nasties. And like I said, every time some fucked up crime happened, and like I said later on, like the Hungerford massacre, like when that guy like went and shot up all those people, like in the UK. Yeah, they blamed that on horror movies.
Thank you, Emily.
Ooh, did we get a super chat?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Emily. You guys should watch the 2020 BBC version of Dracula. Yeah, that's like I had heard about that. I think we start watching it. I kind of feel like that's like really
2020. Okay, then
that's really familiar.
What's his name wasn't talking about that. Brian Tenold wasn't talking about the 2020 BBC, was he? He was talking about the old BBC.
You're not Brandon Tenold, like James from Cinemassacre.
Yeah, James from Cinemassacre. That's right.
No, he wasn't. No, he was talking about the 70s
BBC
one.
BBC one, yeah.
Yeah, that's like a newer one because that video is like a couple years old where he was talking about like the Dracula stuff. Yeah, there was like some. Hold on, there was like some questions that I missed. We've getting like a lot of comments on this. It's like it's hard for me to keep track of them. Rebecca says, "Hi folks, I'm late as usual." Well, you're in Australia, so fair enough. This will be my go-to watch tomorrow night. We're kind of like all over the place, but that's okay. I mean, honestly, we're talking about video nasties, but it's like you just kind of like talking about like fucked up horror movies, which is like that's totally fun. Rebecca said I was watching horror and true crime as a 5+-year-old. I totally agree that I learned that scary stuff is worldly. Yeah, I would, like I said, I would argue that I don't know. I just think it's healthy. I think it's healthy for kids to get it. So, like I said, if they want to, I don't think you should like force it on them if they don't like it, because I know some kids are maybe more sensitive than others, but I liked spooky shit. I wanted to watch spooky shit, even if it scared me, because I kind of feel like when I was a kid,
it's like going on a roller coaster.
Yeah, it was like that. Like I was really into like, and sometimes I'd have nightmares, or sometimes I couldn't sleep after I saw it, but I still wanted to watch it.
I started off watching like the Universal Monsters and the old black and white Twilight Zones episodes. That's where I got introduced.
Some of those Twilight Zones are like pretty freaky.
Yeah. That's where I got, I guess you could say, introduced to like horror and sci-fi and shit like that. And then the Night Gallery, that scared the shit out of me.
Oh my god, I love Night Gallery.
Yeah,
I still love Night Gallery.
Yeah,
Night Gallery's so good. I think that was one of the things that got me into. I mean, I was still like into funny shit too, like the Addams Family and stuff. But it's just kind of like, I think maybe Night Gallery was one of my earliest, or maybe it was Twilight Zone, because that was, that's like before my time, obviously, but they were like repeated on TV all the time.
Legend 007 says Gen X people were told him how they would be traumatized by Return to Oz. That had Fairuza Balk in it.
I'm definitely going to be reviewing that, because I know, like, you guys, because you asked about, because I did Rikki Tikki Tavi, and I did, like, I was talking about stuff that, like, traumatized our generation, like, when they were younger, and Return to Oz is one that comes up a lot. And I was like, yeah, I totally need to do a video on that, because there was some fucked up shit in that movie. Like,
still
for little kids.
Though.
It is. It's really good. Yeah. But like I said, that was that whole 80s era where you saw even shit that was ostensibly for kids, like The Dark Crystal and stuff like that, had some really like scary shit in it. And I'm a big advocate of that. I think that's cool.
The Disney animated movie Black Cauldron is supposed to be really good. I've never seen it.
Yeah, and I
did. You can't get it now. You can't get it, can you?
Yeah, you can.
I thought Disney got rid of it. They don't.
No.
You can't get it. Okay.
Well, I did a video the other day because somebody asked me about The Watcher in the Woods, which was it was a live action movie, and it was an adaptation of a novel, and it came out like in 1980, 1981 or something like that, like early 80s. And so I did a video where I was talking about like Disney's dark phase, quote unquote, which included Black Cauldron, also like The Black Hole. Movies where they were trying to be like go like skew toward like a slightly older audience, and so like slightly darker, like Something Wicked This Way Comes. That was another one, like the Ray Bradbury adaptation. So that was the thing. I kind of feel like they did kind of go in that direction for a little while, and a lot of, even though none of those movies were all that financially successful, this many years later, like people of our generation still remember them, because that was something that like really made an impact when they were growing up. Like I said, like kids love scary shit. You love scary shit, and you like remember the first scary shit that you saw. And I didn't see Watcher in the Woods back in the day, but I did see Black Cauldron. I did see Black Hole. I saw that in the theater actually. Which actually kind of like freaked me out a little bit. As of that one scene where like that big fireball was like coming up the thing. Like I remembered that.
Growing up as a kid in California, going to Disneyland, half of Disneyland was scary back in those days.
Yeah.
You had Snow White, which is a scary ride.
It was. Snow White was very scary.
Yeah, Space
I remember
Mountain.
I remember
Yeah.
Snow White being like one of the scariest
Yeah,
fucking
Snow White
things
was
in it.
scary. That fucking witch comes out and it's screaming. And it's fucking super loud, and there's like it's got. I think doesn't it have a heart? Or no?
Well, that was
then
kind of that was the whole point of the story
Yeah.
was that she wanted Snow White's heart, like to
Heart,
prove that the huntsman had killed her.
Yeah.
So it's like bring back her heart in this
Yeah,
box.
and then there's a fucking.
That's in the cartoon
The
and
mirror.
everything.
The mirror
Yeah.
was talking to her. It was a good ride. I think it's gone now. I think it wasn't really up to snuff to modern standards. And
Well, I mean, me and my sister just went to Disney World,
Yeah.
about a month ago. And yeah, I don't think Snow White's there anymore. Peter Pan is still there.
Yeah.
There's like other rides like of that same caliber that are still
The
there.
haunted house was pretty scary when you were a kid. The Pirates of the Caribbean was pretty scary when you were a kid, but you liked it.
Yeah.
Just because it was scary didn't mean you didn't like it. You
Well, yeah,
liked it.
those were
let's do it again.
there's a reason why
Right.
those were e-ticket rides, like from
Right.
back in the day when you had to like pay for tickets like for each
Yeah.
ride.
And
Those
here-
were the big deal.
And the Matterhorn, it had the fucking abdominal, the abdominal.
The abdominal
It had the
snowman.
abominable snowman. The abominable
That's you.
Snow, that's me. I mean, it had the abominable snowman in it, and the Disney World doesn't have a Matterhorn. I don't think.
No,
It
we
doesn't have
have here we have, like I said, we have
Yeah.
Space Mountain, we have the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad,
Yeah.
which is like a mining
Right.
train, which is
It's
super
the-
fun.
It's the equivalent of
and we have Splash Mountain,
Right.
which is kind of like a water flume,
Yeah.
but it's also kind of like a little
Disney
bit
World
like
is
a-
bigger, but Disneyland has a couple of extra rides on there that are pretty cool. It had one that had a rocket. This rocket that would spin, and you got into cars that would fly around, and you could go up and down on them.
Yeah, I remember we used to have that. I don't think
Yeah.
it's there anymore. though.
Probably not there anymore. But
When I was there last time, I was surprised because they remember like the Dumbo ride, like the elephants or whatever. They still have that, but they moved it somewhere else. And then where that was, they put like a similar ride, but it's like Aladdin, so it's like magic carpets.
Disneyland had what we called the future, the city of the future. I think the city of tomorrow, or
Well,
some shit.
Futureland is what it's called.
Futureland.
Is it called Futureland?
Yeah, what was funny is that the Futureland, even in 1980, still looked like 1961. Yeah, you had.
I kind of like that now because now
Yeah.
it's like retro.
It's retro as shit, but it's called Futureland, but it looks like.
So now it's like
1961.
kind of awesome.
Yeah. You had the fucking people mover.
They're doing a big Tron thing there.
Yeah.
Though. They're building it because my sister showed me. We went around like the people mover and she said, yeah, they're putting like she showed where they were tearing out all the stuff and
Yeah.
it's next to like where the like race cars are.
Yeah.
You know those race car rides. She's like, yeah, they're doing this whole thing and it's gonna be like a big Tron. It's a Tron ride like based on.
The
They're building
Disneyland
it
had
now.
one that they don't have here. It was called the Monsanto ride. We called it the Monsanto ride. I think it was called the Voyage to Inner Space. I think is what it was called. Where you're waiting in line. It's like you're going to go to some kind of space launch, and they try to convince you that they've shrunk you down, and they keep shrinking you down and to the size of where you could see chemicals and molecules. Because fucking Monsanto was a chemical company, so they're trying to show you how awesome chemicals were.
They're
It was a cool ride.
Here, why don't you go into someone's like small intestine?
Yeah, we are now the
That sounds
size of
like-
an
and then
atom.
come out their poop hole.
You are now looking at the nucleus of an atom, and it's like, well, okay, but it's just a round ball with a bunch of light shining.
We
on
had that, but it was at Epcot.
Epcot. Okay.
And I don't think it was a ride. I think it was a walkthrough.
Okay. Now you.
I
rode
can't
in
remember.
this
It was a long time ago.
one. The one
Maybe
in
it was
California
a ride.
rode in it.
I can't remember what it was called though.
Yeah, you got into
Body Wars.
You,
I don't
you
remember.
got into it. Basically, it was the Doom buggy, like from
The Haunted
from
Mansion.
The Haunted Mansion.
I mean, I'm gonna say, like I said, I just was at Disney World like about a month ago, and the Haunted Mansion is still the OG.
Yeah.
I mean, Space Mountain's rad. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad is still rad, but the Haunted Mansion is still like it's the most creative. It's the most fun. It still is like even after all this time.
We had a friend who worked there, and there's a part in the Haunted Mansion here in Florida where this ghostly woman comes at you, and she's got a knife, and she's counting out how many husbands she killed, and then like a fucking axe appears in her hands, and she looks like a 3D ghost. I mean, it looks like it's there, and it's morphing and moving as it's talking. And I said, man, that's an amazing effect. How the fuck do you guys do that? Well, I can't really. But he finally spilled the beans. I'm not going to say because I don't remember exactly. But when he told me how it was done, it was stupid as shit. I said,
Well-
that fucking fooled me. And it's like, yeah, that's all it is.
You can go to Spirit Halloween
Yeah.
and get the same thing for like $30.
What's that?
like of the same kind of projection effect.
Yeah.
Very common nowadays.
Yeah, it
very,
looks
very
like it's
easy to
standing
do.
right there.
It's very easy to do.
It looks like it's standing right there, and it's moving and talking and it's saying things, and she's a beautiful woman in this wedding gown, and it's fucking flowing, and you can kind of slightly see through her. She looks 3D, and then she's till death do us part, and her fucking hand comes out, and a fucking axe comes out. The axe appears in her hand. It's fucking creepy as shit.
See, when I was a little kid, I loved that. Was my favorite thing.
Yeah, I think she reaches up and fucking
badass.
Puts her hand up like that, and a fucking bottle of poison fucking materializes in it. She does all kinds of cool shit. I went through that several times to try to, because she's counting down how many she killed, and each one was different, and I wanted to hear them all. They had them all up on YouTube, but then they took that down. Disney put that. You can't put that there. Everything that she says. You have to go. You have to go through the ride probably about 7 or 8 times just by chance in order to record everything she says, because she's going through a whole monologue.
Yeah, like I said, I'm still gonna say I think the attic thing was added later because I don't remember
that wasn't
that
there before.
Didn't remember that from when I was a kid, like going on the Haunted Mansion, because we used to get. I mean, I grew up in Central Florida.
She was a character from some movie that Disney made, and she was killing all her husbands or something. It was from one of, I think maybe from the Eddie Murphy movie, or it was just
it must have been. I didn't see the Eddie Murphy Haunted Mansion movie because I was like, man, don't besmirch my fucking favorite ride like that. Don't make a movie out of that shit.
The buggy goes up into the attic, and there's all these
good,
fucking chests and fucking all this shit that she's stolen from all these dudes that she's killed up in the damn attic. And she's standing in the fucking bank. You see the pictures, her pictures of all her dead husbands. And when you come around the bed, you can see her from a distance, and she's standing in a corner, just this glowing greenish blue 3D ghost, man. It looks like it's just hanging there in space. It looks real. Looks really good. I was like, how the fuck are they doing that? And it's obviously some kind of projection, but it looks like you pass it and you can see it from the side, like it's 3D, but you can see right through it. And he told me how they did it, but I forgot. And when he told me, it was so simple and so stupid, I never would have.
Most of it's, like I said, it's the same tricks that they used to use back at the carnival, like back before they even had fucking anything.
Yeah.
Like a lot of it's just like projection and mirrors. That's all it is.
Projections and mirrors, and
all you have to do is like arrange the mirrors in a correct way and have the projector in the right place, and it's like you can make all kind of crazy shit.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mango says, I still remember the first horror movie I watched, Taste the Blood of Dracula. Ooh, that's a good one. I was about 4 or 5, scared the hell out of me, and I never looked back. I can't remember. Like I said, I grew up like watching. I think my first thing, I got into horror movies probably when I was like 7 or 8. But I think prior to that, I learned to read pretty young, and the first things that I wanted to read were like ghost stories or stories about witches. I really liked ghost stories and witch stories. So every time I would go to the library, I'd always look for those big compilation books. It's like, the Big Book of Witches or whatever. So I'd always like read that kind of stuff. I think maybe I'm trying to think of like the first horror movie that I remember seeing. I remember seeing The Shining. That came out in 1980, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So I was 8 when it came out in the theater, but I don't think I saw it in the theater because my parents they weren't that cool. They wouldn't have like taken me to see The Shining. But whenever it was on cable, I saw it then, and it scared the fucking shit out of me, but I still wanted to like see it again. It gave me nightmares, but I wanted to see it again. Also, I remember seeing My Bloody Valentine, which I think somebody mentioned. That came out in 1981 when I was 9. And I think I saw that maybe when I was 10 years old, and that also scared the shit out of me. I had like a nightmare about like a miner like popping out my closet and like killing me with a pickaxe. But I still like, and I don't think I slept that night. I went toddling out of my room and like slept on the couch, and my mom was like, "Why are you sleeping on the couch?" I was like, "Is that pickaxe man in my closet?" But I was like 10, and but after that, I was like, I kind of like that experience though. I wanted to like see that again. So. I mean, as long as I can remember, I've always been into, like, creepy shit. That's all I wanted to watch. Even if they scared me, I wanted to go back and see them. Rebecca says, talking about kids, throw them in the water, so to speak. Silver Bullet. Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. Lost Boys. Freddy. Yeah, Scream 7. For today, the Fear Street trilogy. Yeah, I kind of feel like nowadays there's a lot of stuff that is scary, but like is still like age appropriate for like little kids, you know what I mean? Like you could show them like all kind of stuff nowadays. Like I think in the 90s they had like the Goosebumps series, and even nowadays you could show them something like, you know, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, that Guillermo del Toro movie. Like, you could show them that because that's kind of like geared slightly toward like a younger audience. But and then as they got older, like, you could show them. And like I said, there was a lot of movies like that in the 80s that were like kind of scary, but you know, were still like not really, really bad. Weren't like a fucking slasher movie. And I would even argue that even some slasher movies and horror movies that came out in the 70s and 80s, you could probably still show those to a kid and they wouldn't be all that upset about it. Like, you know what I mean? Because considering like all the fucking shit they see nowadays.
Once you catch up with the...
Okay.
You always let it get by.
Well, I don't let it get by. It's just I try to answer that stuff, but you're talking, so it's
She blames it on me.
No, I'm just saying that sometimes you're talking and I don't want to interrupt you. So, yeah.
You also got
I know, I got that.
I got that right.
I got that. I know, I got really behind.
Okay.
Yeah, they're talking about Monster Squad. Yeah, that's a good one to show to kids. I think that was 87. Mango said Insidious and Sinister are the last films that really scared me. Sinister is a great movie. I remember Insidious being good too, but Sinister was like really, really good. I haven't seen the second one. I don't know if it's any good or not, but I think Sinister was so good because, well, Ethan Hawke was great in it. But I don't know. I just like the whole concept, and like the whole concept of like the videos that he found was like super creepy. But I haven't seen the second one. Rebecca's like, oh my goodness. So, okay. Mango said it was okay. Started off okay, but went downhill. Okay. Well, I'll watch it one of these days. Yeah, Return to Oz. Like I said, I'm gonna review that one of these days.
Somebody mentioned Song of the South. I reckon you can find Song of the South. It's a good movie. It's got really good music, real good Southern traditional African American stories in it. I think it's a beautiful movie. I don't think they ever should got rid of it. It wasn't racist.
Well, you know, at the
just very Southern as a movie of its time, and
at Disney World, like Splash Mountain is
based on that.
Based on that. I think they're changing it up. Like, I mean, it's been like that for a long time. I think they're changing it up to a more recent movie, which is Princess and the Frog. But because you know there's frogs, so they thought they wouldn't have to change it all that much. And I don't think kids nowadays have seen Song of the South. But...
Yeah, if you look, you can find Song of the South on YouTube a lot of times, bootlegged, and you'll see in the comment sections, you know, black people are going like, "Why is this bad? This is all traditional African American stories, and there's nothing racist about this." It's about the antebellum South after slavery and Reconstruction, and Uncle Remus fucking telling his fucking stories, you know, and it's a great story. It's a great movie, and the singing's great, and that guy should have got an Oscar for that. They wanted to give him an Oscar. His fucking singing is fucking fantastic.
Adriana says, Erie, Indiana, The Gate, and The Monster Squad were spooky and also had heart in them. Great ingredients for horror for kids. Yeah, if you're looking for some, like, 80s kind of shit, I always say, like, The Gate. I love The Gate. Like, it came out, like I said, I think it was 87. That's a great horror movie. It's scary, but it's still, you can still show it to, like, a kid, and they wouldn't be too traumatized. Same with Monster Squad, because that has, like, scary shit in it and like people die and stuff, but it's still like kind of funny also, so it's like it hits like a really good like balance. Ben says 101 Dalmatians was very scary. I mean, just the idea of like this woman that's like, I'm gonna skin all these fucking dogs.
Yeah, to make a
Jesus Christ, that's like that's traumatic nowadays.
Yeah.
Legend of 007 said, I love the scary 3-headed troll robot in the Norwegian ride at Epcot Center. Yeah, I remember that. I haven't been to Epcot in a long time, but I remember that ride. I'm sad they got rid of it. I kind of want to go, like, my sister's coming back down in early December, and if I have the money, which I probably won't, but if I had the money, I kind of wanted to go and, like, do some park hopping, because I haven't been to Epcot, like, for a really long time, and I don't even know what they have there anymore. Like, she knows, but, because she goes a lot, but... Rebecca said the Haunted Mansion, even as an adult the first time around, was creepy. It's funny, because I've been on it a million times, and I was trying to... This last time that I went, I was trying to, like, think... what it would be like if you'd never been on it before, because there was a family in front of us who had a little kid who was probably 3 or 4. He had a little, I mean, it was the Halloween, like Disney, like Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween party, so the kid had a little costume on. I think he was a minion, and he was screaming from the second they taught him, you know, because when you go into the Haunted Mansion, like, they bring in that first room, you know what I mean, like before you get on the Doom buggy, and they're doing like the stretching portraits and all that. That kid was screaming his fucking head off, like, before, like, as soon as they got in the room. And I said, oh, this kid's going to have a really bad time. And so They were in the buggy in front of us, and that kid screamed the whole fucking ride. But like by the end of it, I think he'd kind of like got through it because we saw him like get off, and he seemed all right after that. I said that kid's gonna be okay. He was like scared shitless though, and I was thinking to myself like, when I was on it, because I've been on it a bunch of times, and I was trying to think like if I was like a fucking 3 or 4 year old kid that had never seen anything like this would probably be really scary. I mean, if you're coming at it from that point of view, the Haunted Mansion at Disney is probably really scary. The whole thing, it's like really, really dark. You know, everything, there's like this creepy voice and like all this creepy music, and it's like there's fucking shit popping out at you all the time. So I kind of feel like, yeah, I could see why that kid was like scared, but you know.
How long have you been running?
2 hours and 48 minutes.
You getting hungry? 2 hours and 40, it's almost a 3-hour show.
I know. And it's like, I feel like I haven't even hardly talked about the topic at all.
Well, we kind of have been talking about it.
I mean, I guess.
We've done, this is the second time we've done this topic, so.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. But, you know, I just felt kind of bad because I was so stressed out because I was like, oh my God, I'm not ready.
No, you're like, more than ready.
I'm not, though.
Yeah.
Legend 007 said, hee, parents complained Gremlins and Temple of Doom were PG and scared their kids. That's why Steven Spielberg recommended the invention of PG-13. I know, but that's fucking
stupid.
It is, but it's like, I can see why that happened, though, because Gremlins and Temple of Doom. Okay, Gremlins has these little monsters. I don't think it was so much the little monsters. I think it was the scene where the mom puts the gremlin in the blender and, like, chops them all up. Because even then, I was like, oh, dude, that's not cool. That's a living creature. Let's not do that. And Temple of Doom had, you know, them like tearing out someone's heart. So even though like kids were watching that, but like I said, it's, you know, it's fine. Kids can handle it. It's scary, but I kind of feel like, I think that's why kids like those, because they felt like the movie wasn't talking down to them. It was like, it seemed like you were seeing something that was kind of like adult, and it had respect for you, because it's like, look, I know this is scary, but you can handle it. You know what I mean? I think that's a lot more respectful than kind of like trying to like pander to like a younger crowd. Victor says, someone give me some horror movie recommendations, any platform. Well, like I said, since we haven't even like fucking bothered talking about this topic, so let's go down to the list.
Yeah.
We'll go to the list of video nasties. That's what we'll talk about, because, you know, obviously we're talking about some other shit. Because we were talking about before, like, and I kind of got like off. Somebody asked you what your favorite video nasty was.
What mine was?
Yeah.
I don't know what's on the list.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Some of these I know you haven't seen. Like the 39 that were prosecuted films. These were ones that were successfully prosecuted in one way or another. Like either somebody got fined or arrested from, or they were like seized or whatever. Some of these probably, like I said, you haven't seen. Absurd, I don't think you've seen that one.
No.
Anthropophagus, the beast, that's like the man-eating guy. I love that the Wikipedia list also has all of the alternate titles. For some reason, I'm really into like horror movie alternate titles. They always like make me laugh. Axe, like I said, A Bay of Blood, which is a classic.
Sounds familiar.
Everybody should see that. It's Mario Bava.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's a really very early, like a proto slasher. If you see it, if you see it, I even have like a little poster. I don't know if you can see it, like on the Bahia de Sangre. That's Bay of Blood right back there. Although I prefer the title Twitch of the Death Nerve. I think that's a way better title. Yeah. It's like Friday the 13th, except spoiler alert, everyone's the killer. Like
everyone's killing everybody else.
Pretty much. Okay. Well, the whole thing, like the whole plot of the movie revolves around this bay, obviously, like all this property around this bay, and they're all trying to like get like very like inheritance, and like they're all trying to get this land. So it turns out, like, you don't know this until the end, but like I mean, it's an old movie. So, but like I said, spoiler alert. It turns out that the killer isn't just one person. Like everybody at least kills one other person, like in the thing. So everybody's the killer, like essentially. Let's see, Beast in Heat. Or SS Hell Camp, that's its other name.
I don't know that one.
Blood Feast, that's good old Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Which one was that?
Very, very early. That might be the first splatter film.
I don't think I know that one.
We should probably review that one. I know we've done, we did a couple H.G. Lewis films, did we not? Have I done Color Me Blood Red? I feel like I maybe reviewed Color Me Blood Red, which is my favorite one. I don't know why I have affection for that one. Blood Feast, it's not a great movie. I'm not saying that, but it was way, way, way ahead of its time. It came out in the 60s, and it's basically about, like, this Egyptian ritual where you, like, cut a person apart, and there's, like, cannibalism and stuff. And it's pretty... I mean, it looks pretty cheap and shitty by today's standards, but for the 1960s, it's, like, pretty out there. So, I mean, there's a reason why H.G. Lewis is still remembered to this day. He was the first dude that was doing splatter flicks, pretty much. The Burning, that was to Tom Savini's early work. That was, which I don't even remember that being that gory. So, I don't know. Cannibal Apocalypse, Cannibal Ferox, Cannibal Holocaust. You had Cannibal in the title.
None of that shit.
You had Cannibal in the title. They were going to put you. They didn't even give a shit. Don't Go in the Woods. Driller Killer. Like I said, I really liked Driller Killer. Evil Speak.
Good one. I like Evil Speak.
Yeah, he likes Evil Speak.
I recommend that one.
Yeah, that's a good movie, actually.
Yeah.
I mean,
kid in the military academy fucking summoning the devil.
It's cheesy, but
yeah.
Through his Apple IIe.
Through his Apple IIe.
Or whatever it was. Faces of Death.
And there may be several versions of that, of Evil Speak. Because my boy sent me another version of it that's longer. I haven't seen it again. Brian.
Yeah?
Yeah, hack it.
It says, like, the UK, at least in the terms of this, it says that it was released in 87 with 3 minutes and 34 seconds cut out, as I mentioned. But it was re-released uncut in the UK in 2004. Okay.
So, recommendation on this list, Evil Speak.
Okay.
That's one I can recommend. Faces
of Death, which, like I said, Flesh for Frankenstein. I actually really like Flesh for Frankenstein. We reviewed that not too long ago. Do you remember that? No, the Andy Warhol Flesh for Frankenstein? With Udo Kier? Yeah, that one's a lot of fun. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I don't
recommend that over Evil Speak, though. He would like Evil Speak over that.
Probably.
That one you're talking about, that's an expert. You gotta have expert taste for that one, and it's hilarious in a way.
It's very camp.
Real campy. But see, out of what I heard so far, I recommend Evil Speak. That's a good one.
Let's see.
It should be famous. It's not that famous. I don't know why that movie's not
famous. Yeah.
It's just the timing. It's almost kind of like Evil Dead. It's at that level. The dude.
No, Evil Dead is way more famous.
I'm talking about the quality-wise. It's kind of like Evil Dead in a way. Or dude hulks out with the power of Satan and fucking kills a bunch of people. It's pretty, and weird shit happens. I liked it.
Let's see. I was laughing at this one like before we started the show. There's a movie called The Gestapo's Last Orgy, which I don't think I've actually seen. I have seen some Nazi exploitation. I saw like all the Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS. I saw all those. Yeah. But the reason this made me laugh is because one of its alternate titles is Caligula reincarnated as Hitler. Which I don't know why that made me laugh so much, but it's like it did. Another one that was on the banned list was House by the Cemetery, the Lucio Fulci classic. I don't understand why that would be on there. But I really like House by the Cemetery. Not as good as The Beyond, but I don't know. House by the Cemetery is good. House by the Cemetery is good. It's not as surreal as The Beyond. I think that's probably why I don't like it as much. And the dubbing of the kid, Bob, is ridiculous. But I think that's like why a lot of people like it. Is because of that dubbing. It's a memorable character, that's for sure. As I said, I Spit on Your Grave. That's on there too, which I actually like that movie.
It's pretty good.
I like that movie.
Yeah, it's all right.
I like that movie. I don't know. I have an affection for that movie. Last House on the Left is a fucking classic. That's Wes Craven. Like I said, again, not a pleasant movie to watch, but it's undeniably like a fucking well-made fucking movie with a lot of thought behind it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Let's see, what else is on here? Madhouse, which actually that's one I've been wanting to cover for a long time. Love Camp 7, that was another kind of like Nazi exploitation. Nightmares in a Damaged Brain, that one's pretty good. I haven't seen it in a long time. Night of the Bloody Apes, that's terrible. Night of the Demon, the only thing, that was the Bigfoot one, right? The only thing I remember about that one was the dude getting his dick ripped off. Yeah. Which made me laugh, but that's the only thing I can remember.
Yeah, that's not noteworthy.
Not really. And I think that was why it got on that list, because that dude getting his dick ripped off. Snuff, which, like I said, was purported to be like a real snuff movie. Obviously it wasn't. And if you watched it, that would be very clear. SS Experiment Camp. There was another one. Tenebrae, which I don't understand. That's a Dario Argento movie. What? Why is that on there? Yeah, it's violent. Maybe it was the scene where that girl gets her arm cut off with a machete, and then she like goes like that, and there's like a big lovely spray of blood like across the wall, which is like a great fucking scene. Tenebrae is a great movie. That's like probably one of his best giallo movies. His best giallo movies like probably Deep Red, but Tenebrae is good too. The Werewolf and the Yeti. And Lucio Fulci's, in the UK it was called Zombie Flesh Eaters. Over here it's just called Zombie. It's also called Zombie 2.
Crappy movie.
It's good. Zombie's good.
There's no zombies in it.
Yeah, there are. What are you talking about?
End, I think.
Yeah, there's zombies at the very end. But the zombie in that one, you have to admit, that is one of the best cinematic zombies.
Yeah.
I mean, with the fucking worms coming out of his eye and all that kind of shit, that's fucking fantastic.
Had to wait forever to see a zombie.
I'm going to bat for Lucio Fulci though, because I really like. Yeah, he made so many movies, and it's like everybody in the U.S., like everybody's into horror movies, knows Lucio Fulci because of like Zombie and The Beyond and House by the Cemetery and like City of the Living Dead and like all his like gore movies. He made movies in all kind of genres. I've covered a couple of them. I did New York Ripper not too long ago, which was like a slasher giallo type movie. He did like a lot of giallo movies. Honestly, one of his best movies, I think, was The Psychic, or Murder to the Tune of 7 Black Notes. I was like really into that movie. It was like a giallo, but like with a little bit of a supernatural paranormal component. And I think that's great. And I think a lot of people, I'm also a big fan of like House of Clocks, which he actually made for Italian TV, which is like murderous old people. And that's like pretty fucked up too. I couldn't believe that they showed some of the shit that they showed like on Italian. He made it for Italian TV, and it's like super super gory. So yeah, like not as gory as some of his other stuff, but it's still pretty gory for like for TV. But yeah, I think I talked about one of his kind of like shittier movies the other day. Not Demonia. What was the one that I just talked about the one about the fucking Egyptian thing that wasn't like really all that great. But yeah. So there's another section. Those are like the 39 that are like the worst. Those were like prosecuted. And then there's like some that are section 2. And these were non-prosecuted films. These were ones that they thought were maybe prosecutable, but for whatever reason, like either the prosecution failed or they didn't think it was worth it or something like that. On that list, you had The Beyond, which, like I said, is a fucking classic. I don't understand why that would be on there. The Boogeyman, Cannibal Terror, Contamination, Dead and Buried. Dead and Buried
that's good, yeah.
is a great
flick.
Film. Okay. Is a great film.
So far,
I love Dead and Buried.
So far, I can say
Evil Speak.
Evil Speak and Dead and Buried. Those are two. Okay.
Those are both really good.
Those are two real good.
And like I said, I've seen more of these, so I'm gonna go to bat for like Tenebrae. That's a fucking classic, and all the Lucio Fulci ones are.
Dead and Buried is kind of almost like a pseudo zombie flick in a way.
Dead and Buried is so good.
Yeah, it's weird.
So good.
It's weird. It's a weird take on a zombies Frankenstein type of deal.
And I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about it.
No, it almost feels like it's a
little bit underrated.
That one to me always kind of felt like a Stone flick. Almost kind of like the
Oliver
Hand.
Stone?
Almost like an Oliver Stone. Or a cross between Oliver Stone and fucking dude who did fucking Videodrome and all that. Fucking
David Cronenberg?
Yeah. Kind of like a Cronenberg and an Oliver Stone flick mashed together. That's a well-made movie. And it's fucking weird. Really weird.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking about Video Nasties, how come Cronenberg shit never got on here? Because his shit is like way disturbing.
Yeah.
I guess because they thought of him as like, oh, well, he's an artistic filmmaker.
Yeah, maybe.
So you can get away with a lot more. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
Because, well, here's the thing. Like, if you're somebody like Cronenberg or like David Lynch or somebody like that, you can put all kind of disturbing shit in your movies, and it's like nobody's going to get all that mad about it because it's like, oh, well, he's like an auteur. So you can get away with a lot more. So, you know.
Mango knows Dead and Buried. He says it's a great flick. Yeah,
Dead and Buried is so good.
Yeah, it's good.
I really, like I said, I kind of feel like more people should see that. Mango says Ethan Hawke is amazing in Black Phone. I still haven't seen that. Like, the trailer looks really good. I need to see it. And when Victor was asking for horror movie recommendations, Hugo said, I liked Malignant. I did too. It's crazy. It's like over the top, but I liked that it leaned into it. Barbarian is also fantastic. I loved that.
I haven't seen it yet.
I watched it. I think you'd probably like it. I think you'd like it. I reviewed it for my channel. And Vivarium. Yeah, Vivarium is fucking great.
Vivarium's good.
I love Vivarium.
That's a love it or hate it flick.
We've seen it like 5 or 6 times.
I own it.
We've
I
seen,
fucking love
We've seen it
Barbarian.
a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Let's see. Pat says, "Oh yeah, I haven't watched this yet." He says there's a Lucio Fulci documentary on Shudder, which I'm enjoying. Yeah, I've been meaning to like watch that. It's like on my little watch list. Emily says, "Not a video nasty, but Eddie and the Cruisers is such a forgotten classic." You know what's weird is like we were watching, because the movie that we're going to be reviewing for the movie retrospective this week is the John Carpenter movie Village of the Damned, like the remake. We meant to record it today, but we didn't have time, so it might be a little bit late going up for patrons, but it'll be up by Friday. And the guy that was in that, Michael Pare, I was like, hey, I think that was the guy from Eddie and the Cruisers. Eddie and the Cruisers was one of those movies that I don't think I ever sat down and watched the whole thing, like, all the way through, but it seemed like it was always on. Like, every time you were, like, flicking through the channels, like, on cable, I was like, oh, there's Eddie and the Cruisers again. Because it's like, as soon as I saw that guy in the movie, I was like, on the dark side. And I was like, oh, that guy must have been in Eddie and the Cruisers. Oh, my God. Let's see. Zach says, my favorite video nasty is Possession. Yeah, that was kind of like, I feel like Possession was, like, the only art film. Maybe. Was that like the only art film that got on the list? And honestly, I don't really understand. I don't know. I don't understand like why a lot of these movies got on there. Like it just seems very arbitrary to me. Possession, I don't remember it. I haven't seen it in a long time, but I don't remember it being all that upsetting. And I don't remember anything in there particularly that would like upset anybody. So, you know. Mango said, yeah, Dead and Buried was banned for years, which is crazy. I don't remember anything, like, super egregious in that one either. Let's see. Mango said they were heavily cut in the UK, especially Videodrome. Okay, so Cronenberg's movies were. I just kind of felt like, well, I was sure they were probably cut, but it's just, like, it was interesting to me how none of his stuff ever got mentioned in the same breath as, like, the video nasties. And I thought maybe because it was easier to go after, like, these kind of, like, more cheap exploitation flicks rather than more art house stuff like Cronenberg.
Well, they probably had
but Mango
protection.
said that they were heavily cut in the UK.
Really? Okay.
Like Videodrome was heavily cut, and I'm sure because I kind of wait a minute, wasn't Scanners like on one of the lists? Although I think I read that Scanners they passed it uncut, and I was like, even the exploding head, because even by today's standards, that's pretty gory. Even though that's the only
We
part
saw
that
that
anybody
recently.
remembers.
Scanners is a great movie.
I love Scanners.
Yeah.
I mean, I love David Cronenberg.
Yeah. His
Scanners
stuff all
isn't my
holds up.
favorite movie of his, but I mean, he has so many fucking good ones. I don't even know if I could pick one, to be honest with you. I mean, Dead Ringers probably, if you put a gun in my head, but they're all good. Jesus Christ, I don't really
I think
know.
I have to say Videodrome.
Yeah, I mean, video drama, so nobody's going to argue with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mango said you can get them uncut now. Yeah, I figured you probably could. I kind of feel like that was kind of the case. Once the 2000s rolled around, I think they realized, well, this, you know, the horse is out of the barn now. So it's like they couldn't really control it to any extent. So most of the movies that, you know, people were making such a like fucking big fucking brouhaha about back in the day, they watched them again and they were just like, oh, there's really nothing in this I mean, especially compared to shit nowadays. Holy crap, like the shit that flies now. That they just show in regular theaters. Like I said, they should fucking Terrifier 2, which is supposed to be like the fucking goriest movie ever. I was recording a radio show yesterday, and the girl was talking about, she's like, oh, I just went and saw Terrifier 2, and I was like, is it good? I kind of wanted, she's like, well, it's kind of long. She's like, it's 2.5 hours, and, which is very long for a horror movie. But she's like, and I really like gory movies, and even I was just kind of like it was a little much. And I was just kind of like, well, now I really want to see it. Because I'm like, now I'm kind of like interested to see what's going on. Because I liked the first one. The first one was a lot of fun. Let's see. So there's another movie called Death Trap, which actually probably better known
Good
as...
movie.
Well, okay.
No, I was thinking Tourist Trap.
Yeah, Tourist Trap.
Sounds...
Death Trap was also known as Eaten Alive.
I maybe don't know that.
Which... The thing about it, though, was that there was another movie called Death Trap that was, I think, like a murder mystery, like a funny comedy murder mystery. And I think there was, like, some hijinks around that where people, like, got it confused with this movie. I think that happened a lot. You know what I'm saying? Like, because stuff would get caught in the net because, like I mentioned earlier about, like, the best little whorehouse in Texas, where they just came in and saw the title and presumed, oh, that must be a porno movie, even though it's not. It's like a musical comedy. There's like not even any boobs in it as far as I remember, because we reviewed it not too long ago. Let's see. Deep River Savages or Man from Deep River. I know it is Man from Deep River. Delirium. Don't go in the house. Don't go near the park. Don't look in the basement. Don't do all these things. Evil Dead. There's another one. So Evil Dead is another one that's a really good movie that's on the list. Frozen Scream. I kind of remember that one. The Funhouse. I guess that's the Toby Hooper one. That's
great movie.
actually a good movie.
Okay, so that's 3 I can recommend.
That's a good one.
I can recommend Evil Speak, Dead and Buried, and Funhouse.
And the Funhouse.
Funhouse.
And the Evil Dead.
Yeah, but he's probably seen that.
Everybody's seen the Evil Dead, I feel like.
The Funhouse was good.
There was something about the Funhouse that I really liked.
Yeah. That's
something
81 maybe, 1980, around that time.
The Funhouse was, 1980, 1990, I can't remember. Like I said, that's the Toby Hooper movie.
Yeah.
Human Experiments. Here's the funny one. There's a movie called I Miss You, Hugs and Kisses. And this movie was not, as far as I remember, this was not a horror movie. It ended up on the list because one person somewhere complained about it because I guess they were expecting a different kind of movie, and it turned out but it really has, other than a couple very, very minor scenes of violence, it has nothing in it that would warrant its place on the list. And for all of these years, people have been mystified as to what it was exactly that warranted this movie being on the Video Nasties list, even though it's only in the second tier or whatever. But I haven't seen it, but I've heard that it's not even a horror movie or anything. Some of these aren't. Some of them are, like I said, some of them are Nazi exploitation, or some of them are, because I kind of feel like a lot of the older ones were, it wasn't even just so much horror, rape or evisceration or things like that they were offended by. Sometimes in the early days, they'd be offended by just a kind of general anti-authority kind of attitude or something like that. One documentary that I was watching about, that wasn't necessarily about Video Nasties, but it was about the British Board of Film classifications, just through the ages. And they were talking about letters they had received about movies as far back as Marlon Brando, in The Wild One and stuff like that. And people writing in complaining about that. Listen to the way he's talking to an adult and things like that. And they would get really offended. I'm like, oh my God, people were such fucking snowflakes back then. But yeah, so there was that. Also Inferno, which I'm assuming is the Dario Argento one. Again, yeah, it's violent, but I mean, that's a great fucking movie. Not as good as Suspiria, obviously, but still great. Killer Nun, Late Night Trains, Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue. That one was all right. I haven't seen it in a long time. Nightmare Maker, Possession, that's what Zach was just talking about. Like I said, as far as I know, pretty much the only art film that turned up on there. Pranks, Prisoner of the Cannibal God, Revenge of the Boogeyman, The Slayer, Terror Eyes, also known as Night School, The Toolbox Murders. I remember seeing that one. We rented that one a bunch of times. Unhinged, Visiting Hours. I remember Visiting Hours being okay. That was the one in the hospital, right? That was set in the hospital. I remember that one being all right. The Witch Who Came from the Sea. I watched that fairly recently, and I cannot imagine why that would have offended anyone. But you know what I mean. It's this many years later. It's kind of hard to cast our eyes back and figure out. Women Behind Bars. Yeah, there was a lot of these women in prison movies that they didn't like those either. Zombie Creeping Flesh, also known as Hell of the Living Dead. I remember that one. I don't think that one was all that memorable. I did see it, but the Section 3 ones, this was a supplementary list, and this was not the official list, but the movies on this list, you couldn't prosecute these for obscenity, but they still, I guess, left it open that you could seize these if in your discretion that you thought that these were less obscene but still not really appropriate for anyone to rent. Also, these could be destroyed after they were forfeited, so you had some of those. Trying to think of some of these. Blue Eyes of the Broken Doll, I think that's a Giallo film. I think I'm going to get around to doing that one of these days. More cannibal movies. Christmas Evil, I think we talked about that maybe last Christmas or the Christmas before. That's kind of a terrible movie. Alice, Sweet Alice.
Oh yeah, good.
For Christ's sake, that's a great fucking movie.
I can recommend that too.
They have it listed as Communion, which that's what it might be called in the UK. I'm not really sure. I know that's the alternate title, but over here it's known as Alice, Sweet Alice, and that's a fucking fantastic movie. That's an American Giallo. It's like a Giallo movie, but giallo slasher hybrid, but like with a, I was gonna say with a kid killer, but not necessarily. You know what I mean? That's kind of like what they're trying to make you think that. Brutes and Savages, Cannibal World, Dawn of the Dead. Come on, Dawn of the Dead. That's also a great movie. Dawn of the Mummy, Dead Kids, aka Strange Behavior. I saw that recently, and there's really not much to that either. Deep Red, Profondo Rosso. That's a great fucking movie too. Demented, The Demons. Don't Answer the Phone. There's more of those don't movies. Don't answer the phone. Don't go in the basement. Don't watch this movie. Eaten Alive. That's the Tobe Hooper one. That's the one that I'm thinking of. Enter the Devil. The Erotic Rites of Frankenstein.
That's funny.
Now I kind of want to see that just from the title. The Evil.
The Evil.
That was the one. You like that movie. That's that one like yeah.
The haunted
Is
mansion
that
one.
the same one that we're talking about?
Yeah. That's a good movie.
That's a really good
That's
movie.
a real good movie. It was just a
1978, I think?
Yeah, low budget California movie taking place in a big old fucking like abandoned it's probably a hotel. And it's kind of like oh shit. Kind of like The Legend of Hell House. It's similar to that. It's a good flick. The Evil.
It is good. I like it a lot. It's like a ghost story.
Right.
Let's see. The Executioner, Final Exam. Foxy Brown. Why Foxy Brown?
I don't know.
That's not even a horror movie. That had Pam Grier and that's blaxploitation. That's just like a fun. Yeah, it says passed in edited form for cinema, passed with 2 minutes and 48 seconds of cuts in 1987. Although released uncut in 1998. What could they possibly have cut out of that? I haven't seen it in a long time, but I don't remember anything particularly offensive. Friday the 13th, which I don't even remember anything in that was particularly egregious. Like I said, I mean, I'm probably not the best judge because I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever, machete in the face. All right. I've seen way worse. Friday the 13th, part 2. Let's see. GBH Graduation Day. Happy Birthday to Me. I remember that one. That was the one with like the chick from Little House on the Prairie, the girl that played Mary. And I remember like somebody got skewered. That's really the only thing I remember from that movie is like somebody getting skewered through the fucking mouth with a shish kebab thing. I remember that. Hell Prison. The Hills Have Eyes. That's another Wes Craven one. Poor old Wes Craven. Another great movie. Home Sweet Home. Honeymoon Horror. Inseminoid. That's another one that I've been wanting to do like on the show because I think that's on Tubi. Invasion of the Blood Farmers. Killing Hour, Last Horror Film, The Last Hunter, The Love Butcher, Mad Foxes, Mark of the Devil. Mark of the Devil's great. If you never saw, I used to have a T-shirt that had like a newspaper ad that was like complaining about Mark of the Devil. The only thing I remember from that, I remember it being good. It's kind of like a witch panic, like so it has like a lot of torture and shit in it. The main thing that I remember from it is somebody getting like a fucking nail drove through their tongue or something like that. It was pretty fucked up, you know what I mean? So I'm surprised it didn't turn up like higher up on the list. Martin, the George Romero film.
It's hard to believe that's on that list.
Why is that on there?
I don't know.
Massacre Mansion, Mausoleum. I saw Mausoleum like a year ago, and I just remember it being kind of boring.
Yeah, no, it didn't impress me. I rented it once a long time ago. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, it's on. I think it's on Shudder or it's on something. I just watched it.
Real
I watched
forgettable.
It
I don't remember anything about it.
Yeah, I don't remember it. It wasn't that great. It wasn't that great. Like I said, a lot of these movies probably like they get a lot more attention just because they were on this list. Like if they hadn't been put on this list and somebody like crying about them, like nobody would even remember them probably. Naked Fist, The Nesting. That's another one that I keep see coming up because it's on Tubi, I think, and it's like, is that the one about the roaches or am I thinking of The Nest? Because I know there was a okay. The Nesting, I don't remember that one then. The New Adventures of Snow White, a.k.a. Grim Fairy Tales for Adults, which, okay, that sounds dirty. Night Beast, Night of the Living Dead, for Christ's sake, which...
Dumb.
Why? Okay. Although that says passed with cuts for cinema, released uncut in 1987. Downgraded to a 15 certificate in 2007. So they finally, like, fucking realized, seriously, it's not that bad. Nightmare City, aka City of the Walking Dead, Oasis of the Zombies, Parasite, Phantasm. That's another movie that's fucking great. The original Phantasm. Although it does say that it was passed uncut for cinema, like when it played in the theaters, and then was passed uncut for video in 1918, and then was downgraded to a 15 certificate in 2005. So even back then, they knew that wasn't all that bad. That movie's like so fucking weird. I don't really know why they would have. Pigs, Prey, Prom Night, Rabid. Oop, there's David Cronenberg. Although that was passed uncut for cinema. Also passed uncut for video in 1992. Rosemary's Killer, Savage Terror, Scanners, Scream for Vengeance, Shogun Assassin.
Oh, good movie.
That is a good movie.
Shogun Assassin is Lone Wolf and Cub. All three movies fucking
Mushed
crunched
together.
into about fucking an hour and a half. It's still kind of fun and watchable, but it's Shogun. It's Lone Wolf and Cub. I got the Criterion
Seriously,
edition,
see all the
three.
Lone Wolf and Cub
Yeah.
movies, though, because they're awesome.
Yeah, that's where the Mandalorian came from.
There's like 6 of them, right?
I think there might be 6. No, I thought there was 3. Maybe there's more. I got them all. They
Yeah.
came in, I thought
But
there
it's
was
a big like Criterion collection.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful package,
there's
too.
it's between 3 and 5 maybe. There might be 6, but that's where that's where the Mandalorian came from. About a samurai and a baby with a cart. One of the movies
Yeah.
is called Baby Cart to Hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, all kinds of weird shit
Or
happens.
Baby Cart to Hades,
To
or whatever it
Hades,
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are, I like those. I like those movies.
Yeah, he was like the Shogun's head fucking executioner, and the Shogun turned against him and called for his death and the death of his child. They went on the run. And so they were outlaws, and it's called Lone Wolf and Cub, and it's where they got the idea for the Mandalorian.
Yeah, it's essentially the proto Mandalorian.
Yeah, and his little son's with him in his little kimono with his head shaved and his little top knot. His name is Diagoro.
Diagoro.
Yeah, and he's like the cutest.
That
kid
kid
ever.
is adorable.
And that's where they got Baby Yoda from.
Yeah, that kid's adorable, and he's a badass.
Yeah, he kills people with the baby cart.
Yeah, it's
Baby
super...
cart's got blades in it.
Yeah, it's got like all
blades.
kind of like booby traps and
Yeah.
shit. Like it
Yeah.
can shoot like spears.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
yeah. They're walking the
It's
path.
awesome.
They're walking the path to hell.
Yeah.
is what they're calling it. They're going out in a blaze of glory.
All those movies are good.
Yeah, I gotta watch those again.
All those movies are good. We had like I said, we have the Criterion collection if you can
Yeah.
afford it. Like
Yeah. She got it for me as a gift. It's
yeah.
like- it looks like parchment
It's
paper with samurai
gorgeous.
drawings and shit. It's fucking pretty.
It like all folds out. I think it's
Yeah.
6 movies,
It
but
might
yeah.
be 6, yeah.
Mrs. Evans' Arty Party said, I rented the foreign film High Tension. That's a French film, if you don't know. In 2006, expecting a normal American slasher. It was very graphic, yeah. They do stuff differently over the pond from us. Yeah, High Tension was part of what they call the New French Extremity, which, it's kind of gone by the wayside now. But yeah, there was a time in the mid to late 2000s when France was kind of like on the cutting edge of like way fucked up shit. So we were doing some fucked up shit in our horror movies over there, but if you wanted to see some really fucked up shit, then you would see a French movie because, man, they were doing some terrible, terrible things over there. High Tension's a great movie, though. I know that the ending is kind of controversial, but because a lot of people didn't like it or thought it was dumb or whatever, but I didn't mind it. She also asked, was Faces of Death even real? Some of it was, most of it was not. Most of it was fake.
Got
But-
several people in there talking about how they love Shogun Assassin, and they're talking about certain scenes. So if you like Shogun Assassin, go ahead and fucking rent the whole Lone Wolf and Cub series if you can stream it. If not, just buy the Criterion edition. I think it's like close to $100 though. It might even be more. I think it was a limited production. It's probably worth several hundred. You could probably get it non-Criterion though edition. Maybe.
I would imagine.
Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah.
The series is far more intelligible and rational than a Shogun Assassin. Shogun Assassin is fucking just crazy. It's crazy. It's a fun movie, but that's not really the story.
Well, I think that's kind of like the thing that happened a lot. I mean, it started happening, I think, like even in the 70s, where people were like, oh, everybody likes those kung fu movies, so we're going to like get these really cheap, like, fucking movies from over, like, kung fu movies from over there, and we're just going to, or series, and then they would cut them all together, like, into one of this, like, 90-minute, 2-hour movie that made absolutely no sense at all. Because they were just, like, cutting together all the coolest scenes.
Yeah.
And it's like, who the fuck are these people? It's, like, different characters, like, kicking the ass of this person, and it's just kind of like...
Shogun Assassin is incoherent.
Yeah.
It's fun.
But that's because it was
just chopped
just
up.
like, the best bits from, like, 6 movies.
It's
right?
not even the best bits. It's good stuff. There's a lot of
Right.
cool shit that happens in all those movies, but the story is really where it's at from the Lone Wolf and Cub story. It's kind of like Zatoichi. If you know fucking
Yeah.
Zatoichi. It's like that.
Now Zatoichi, there's
what,
like 26 of those.
30, 40 movies.
I think there's 26 Zatoichi
Yeah.
movies.
Yeah, there's a shit ton.
The blind, he's like a blind guy. He's like the blind swordsman.
Yeah, he's a Yakuza swords master. But he's his cover is to be a masseur. You
Yeah.
can't see
So he goes around doing massages.
Yeah,
everywhere.
he
Oh, and he
massages.
also like gambles everywhere.
Yeah, he gambles. And he's not a samurai. He hates samurai. He kills a bunch of them because they're bad, you know, and they're just like a bunch of crooks. He just hangs out in brothels and gambling houses and tries to save girls from prostitution because a lot of them are just forced in there out of their will. And he does heroic shit. So he's a Yakuza, but he's a good guy. And he was played by a famous Japanese actor. His name was Katsushin, or Shintaro Katsu. And he can sing. And there's a bunch of videos on YouTube of him singing songs from Zatoichi. One of them is called Darkness is My Ally by Shintaro Katsu. Fucking listen to that. That's a fucking good... It's all in Japanese. And he's just this fucking little badass dude. He's not big, he's little. He's kind of hunched over. And he's not real healthy. He's got all kinds of fucking VD and shit. Kind of turns out later on in the movies, he's all diseased and shit. But it's kind of like a tragic hero. It's a good flick. They're all good flicks. They're kind of repetitive, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Over
kind of like the
time,
same
kinda-
story.
Kind of
right?
the same things happens over and over. You can just jump in anywhere and watch any. You don't have to watch them in order.
Yeah,
you can just jump in and watch
you
any
don't have to, like, watch
Zatoichi
them
movie,
over.
and you can play them in pretty much any order. There were certain eras where certain things happened. Like it turns out he has a brother that he's been missing, and the brother is a badass too, and they fucking had a falling out over the same woman, and he killed the girl. Zatoichi's brother killed the girl, so he's got to get revenge. So there's a bunch of cool shit that happens in it. It's where Star Wars came from.
Yeah, Ben says all the blades come out of the pram. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, talking about, you know,
Yeah, Lone
the
Wolf
Lone
and
Wolf
Cub.
and Cub, yeah. The Wallace 6969 mentions Mondo Cane. Yeah, I remember that one. Man Bites Dog. That's a good one, too. That's a French film, too, right? That black and white one. Yeah, that was also good. Mango said, if you want to see how crazy the BBFC is, look at the ratings for two films that came out the same year. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, 15 certificate, and Dolores Claiborne, 18 certificate. Does not make sense. Yeah, I don't get that. I mean, it's been a while since I've seen either one of those movies, but not that long. I mean, I don't really... I don't know why... New Nightmare, I remember that being pretty gory. Like, Dolores Claiborne, what would make that just be 18? I don't really understand. Okay. I don't understand. I don't understand.
Well, guys know this. Fucking Pat's talked about Ichi the Killer. That's a good movie. Yeah.
We need to cover that.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to do that one for a while, too.
Yeah.
I can't believe, like,
And
we
then,
haven't fucking done that one.
Legendary 007 knows that Rutger Hauer movie Blind Fury was inspired by Zatoichi, the Blind Swordsman. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that one. Blind Fury. It was an okay movie. They've done.
I barely remember.
Yeah,
Blind
they've
Fury.
done Zatoichi reboots more recently too. You know, like in the 2000s, they had new ones that came out where Zatoichi's blonde with blue eyes. It's fucking ridiculous. You want to go back to fucking Shintaro Katsu, and Shintaro Katsu accidentally killed a dude on set making those movies.
Whoops.
Fucking killed him with a real sword.
Well,
Yeah.
bound to happen.
They had a problem,
I guess they did.
and they fucking killed the dude. It was a friend of his, evidently. Now here's the thing.
Man, that would suck.
Shintaro Katsu.
All right, I gotta go to that one.
Shintaro Katsu from Zatoichi. It's his brother that plays the Shogun assassin from Lone Wolf and Cub. That's Katsushin's brother. He's kind of a bigger dude, and he's good too. But that's where Star Wars came from. Star Wars, the original old Star Wars series, came in like A New Hope and everything. It was supposed to be a Western and a samurai movie combined. you look at the fucking the Jedi were fucking samurai, basically. And then, you know, Han Solo's he's fucking a Wild West character. Now, there was something else I was gonna say about that, but no, they're fucking great movies. Oh, I remember what it was. There's a real good Western samurai movie. Came out in the 70s, and it had a famous Japanese fucking actor. I forgot his name, Mufuri something or other. He was the guy from Tora Tora Tora. And then it had Charles Bronson in it. It was called Red Sun, and that's one of my favorite Western movies. It's about a diplomatic train that gets fucking robbed out in like around New Mexico, and the Emperor of Japan was going to give a ceremonial sword to the President of the United States, and they were going to start opening up this diplomatic dialogue, and some train robbers stole that sword, and the main diplomat sends out this samurai guy to go retrieve that sword, and he links up with one of the train robbers, who is fucking Charles Bronson. And those two they're enemies, and then they start becoming friends, and they work together to try to get that fucking sword back. It's called Red Sun, and it's kind of hard to find. I don't even think they have a Blu-ray release for it, and you may not be able to stream it, but they had it free on YouTube for a while. That's a good one. That's a real good one. I really recommend that one if you're into all this Satoichi fucking blind swordsman, fucking Shintaro Katsu, fucking lone wolf shit. See Red Sun. Real good. All right, Glenn.
Ben says, was there child molesting shown in Dolores Claiborne? Maybe that's what it was. Because I didn't remember that, but now that you mention it, yeah, maybe that's what it was. I don't think they showed child molesting, but I think they implied it very strongly, so maybe that's what it was. Maybe that's what bothered them. The Wallace 69 says, Megan is missing. That's a movie. I've seen it, and I actually did kind of like a long write-up a long time ago, which I might like repost it on my new site. But I kind of feel like that's one of those movies. The end of it is shocking. I will give it that. But I kind of feel like it's one of those movies that its reputation like outstrips like what it actually is, because I kind of feel like it's found footage. It's essentially, but I think that it's not, the first part of it is not realistic enough to like make me get really that much into it. Honestly, if we're talking found footage, I think the Poughkeepsie tapes was better, but Megan is Missing, I think like the end of it was good. Like some of the imagery like at the end was shocking, but overall I didn't really like it all that much, and I didn't think it was as shocking as it's purported to be. That's all.
Yeah, 007, I think you got it right. That was I think his name was Toshiro Mifune. I think that's who it is.
Yeah.
The guy from Tora Tora Tora. He's a very famous actor. Him and Charles Bronson. Red Sun, as an S-U-N. It was free on YouTube, man. It's a great flick. Great flick. Epic.
Yeah, Ben says even mentioning incest or child abuse can get it a higher rating than a teen slasher film. Yeah, okay. I mean, I don't know if I don't agree with that, but I guess I see where they're coming from. But yeah, so some of the other movies that, like I said, these weren't prosecuted, but they were like ones that were like an adjunct. Suspiria is on there, which, okay, whatever. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which, like I said, if you watch that nowadays, it shows nothing. Most of the shit is like imagination. And The Thing, although this says passed uncut for cinema, they didn't cut anything out when they showed it in the movies. Also passed uncut for video in 1987. So I don't know why they put it on the list, because they didn't take anything out of that, even though that movie is like pretty, compared to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if I had to say like which one of those is gorier or more fucked up, The Thing is like way more fucked up than that. I think.
It doesn't show very much human blood.
That's true.
It's mostly alien stuff.
Maybe that's why. Yeah. Well, and I think that I don't remember who said this, but I remember somebody saying it's like you can show as much like gore and shit like that as you want, as long as it's not like, doesn't look like real blood, as long as it's like green.
Yeah, it was green. It was green in
or if it looks like it's not human.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And the thing was like that. There was a lot of green alien blood and dog parts and stuff. Crab.
Maybe
pieces.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
But see, that's why I think that this whole like fucking the concept behind it is just like pointless because I mean at least I will give them the benefit of the doubt and say at least they did seem to like watch these movies like and assess them on their individual merits, but it still seems very, very arbitrary to me. Yeah. You know, it just seems very arbitrary. So the thing, Tomb of the Living Dead was on there, which we need to cover that one of these days because somebody sent me all those movies. Werewolf Woman Extra, passed uncut for cinema. Also passed uncut for video in 1987, even though that has a scene of a grown man crawling out of a woman's vagina. So, you know, do you remember that?
No. Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I remember, yeah.
That is a weird-ass movie. Yeah. That is a weird-ass movie. And if you, I think I talked about this because I talked about it on my Scare Salon, but, you know, for a while, back in the day, you know, you'd see those videos where it's like, ooh, real paranormal shit, like, or real weird shit, like, caught on tape. You know the scene where the weird alien with, like, the backwards legs and stuff, like, runs across the road? Like, I saw that on a couple of tapes, like, they were purporting that to be, like, an actual sighting. Because I guess they figured that movie was too obscure and, like, nobody would know that was from a movie.
It's a deformed person, I think.
But it's from
Isn't it?
A movie. It's from Extra.
Because there is a deformity where people come out that shape. Either that or it's a guy on its back. But I've seen a video of a guy that looked even worse than that in Brazil, just walking on all fours.
I don't know. I kind of feel like that was probably
just somebody on their back going like that.
Either that or it was just like a creature that they built. I'm not really sure. It's been a long time since I've seen it, so I'm not really sure if like. But yeah, and then there were a couple that were films banned by the BBFC but not classed as video nasties, which would include Maniac, probably because of that scalping scene. Mother's Day, New York Ripper, which I just Lucio Fulci. I just talked about that not too long ago. Silent Night, Deadly Night, which isn't really
That's not gory.
That's not that gory. I think it was just everyone got offended. People got offended in this country too because they were just like Santa Claus can't kill people. You know what I mean? Oh, and Straw Dogs. Straw Dogs is a great fucking. That's Sam Peckinpah. It's a great fucking movie. I think everybody got offended by that movie, which in a way I can see why. The thing that offended everybody about that movie, it's again kind of like a rape revenge film, is that the rape scene, the woman seems like she's getting raped, and then like after a time she looks like she's starting to like get into it, or she's like enjoying it. And I think a lot of people had a problem with that, which I get it. I get that. But I think that's kind of the issue that they had with Straw Dogs more than anything else. It's violent, but it's not more violent than anything else I've ever seen. And then there were other films seized by the police but not classed as video nasties. Basket Case, which that's ridiculous because that's like a silly ass movie. Blood for Dracula, which I think was the Andy Warhol one. City of the Living Dead, that's another Lucio Fulci one, which actually has a scene where a woman barfs up her own intestines and has somebody like have a drill through their head, so I don't know why that wouldn't be on the scene. Macabre, Madman, Night of the Seagulls, which I haven't seen, Terror Express. Other films, like I said, A Clockwork Orange, we talked about that earlier, which, well, that was not banned by the government. They actually passed it. Stanley Kubrick was the one that withdrew that.
Okay.
Because he got death threats.
All right.
What ended up happening, I think, was that the film, I think they actually passed it like it was okay to show in cinemas. But later on, like Stanley Kubrick kept getting death threats because of all the shit in it. So he decided that he was going to pull it.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. So they didn't show it there. Child's Play 3, which I mentioned earlier, that was because of the James Bulger murder. They thought that it had something to do with, like, the kids killing that little boy. So they kind of, like, they didn't ban it. Well, I don't know if they banned it necessarily, but they kind of, like, had a freak out about that. The Exorcist, this was actually never officially cut or never officially banned in the UK. I mean, The Exorcist is a fucking classic, right? But what ended up happening, it played fine uncut in the theaters, but then when it started to like come out on video, James Furman, who I think Mango mentioned earlier, who was a BBFC censor at the time, he's basically like, he tried to get cuts made, or he tried to get it censored because he's like, oh, like the possessed girl in the movie, she's too young, you know, she's 12 years old, and this, so, you know, kids that are underage might be coming to see this. And also, I guess, and this was probably like part of the marketing hype, but they said, oh, there were all these like people like young people that were coming to see the movie that were having like all these hysterical reactions and shit like that. So that might be like contributing. So I don't know. Basically, it's just kind of like it was theatrically re-released in 1998, which I remember because I went and resaw it like in the theater when it came out because they'd added more stuff to it. And then after that, like Furman retired from the censorship board in 1999, so it got resubmitted like for home video release, and they passed it uncut. It just had an 18 certificate, which, like I said, it's like that's equivalent to like an R rating, which fine. That's fine. Last House on Dead End Street, Scum. Oh, I remember that one. I remember that movie. That's not even a horror movie, but yeah, okay, I remember that. And the movie Mikey. This was actually withdrawn from... I remember this not being that bad, but they actually withdrew it because of the James Bulger murder, because they thought there were too many similarities, and they thought that, like, somebody... Like I said, I think they were kind of more concerned about, like, particularly stuff that turned up in movies that had to do with kids, and they were afraid that, like, a kid might see this and, emulate it, I think was their main concern. And barring that, I think nowadays really their main concerns are, like I said, real life animal cruelty. They still cut that, which, like I said, I don't really have a problem with that. And they said if it's real, like, egregious, like, violence toward women, like, super, like, horrible rape or something like that, like, they'll kind of look askance at that. But other than that, most things, as far as I'm aware, like, will pass nowadays without them really, like, being all that concerned about it. But those are really, like, the only two things that they still are kind of like, maybe not. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Ben says Scum, the rape scene is notorious. Yeah, that's right. I forgot. It's been a long time since I've seen Scum, but I did remember there was like a rape scene in there. And I will say that like rape scenes in movies, they do bother me. I don't think you should like cut them though. Like I just recently saw, what was that fucking movie? Irreversible. That has like a really... It's not that graphic, but just like how long it goes on and like how fucking seedy and gross and shit it is. It's like it's really, really hard to watch. So, but I wouldn't argue that you should cut it though. I mean, that shit really happens in real life. It's like probably... So I don't really have an argument with like showing it in a movie. As long as you're not like showing it to kids and stuff. Pat says, maybe it also has to do with the quality of the blood. The Thing had very dark blood. Maybe that's it, or maybe not. Mango said they never reviewed New York Ripper. They sent it straight back. Again, they had it in for Fulci. I could see that. Ben says, City of the Living Dead. Some people snuck into our film society screening just when the guy gets impaled on the drill, then left in shock. I don't understand how people can find that entertaining. Well, there's your problem. That City of the Living Dead is it's a great movie. I mean, it's a fun movie. Like I said, you get to watch a girl barf up her own intestines. It's a good time. And the fact that you have people regulating movies where they don't understand why anybody would want to watch them is part of the problem. It's like, I don't watch that because it's like, ooh, look, it's like, I'm glad that person's dead or whatever. It's just kind of like, I don't know. I can't explain it to somebody that's not
They don't understand horror movies.
They don't understand horror movies.
Yeah.
They don't understand, like, the whole history behind it. It's like they don't have any context.
They don't know the fandom. So
right. We're not watching it because we're depraved, horrible motherfuckers. It's like, it's not like that. You know what I mean? It's hard to explain to somebody that's not into it.
Mostly just analyzing the craft.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, if you can show me something that looks so fucking real that I'm fooled, or like, just the way you portray it is like artistic or something like that, that's its own art form. Yeah. And I don't think they understand that.
I like some horror movies. I like I can differentiate between good ones and bad ones. It's not really my thing, though, really, to be honest. Which I'm always honest about it. I like more sci-fi and fantasy and epic shit. Epic action movies sometimes. Depends on what it is. Military stuff. I like that. Horrors, I can't take horror 24/7. She can. She can just...
Yeah, I love that
She can
shit.
watch them things over and over again.
I love that
I'm
shit.
like a sometimes motherfucker when it comes to horror. Some of it's good and some of it's not good. A lot of it's just boring. That's why, But the thing is like, action movies, a lot of them are boring.
Yeah, I
It
find
just-
a lot of them.
Yeah, a lot. It just,
They're very samey.
It depends. Yeah, it depends on.
But
what
depends
it is.
on what it is, because I
Depends on what it is.
like a lot of horror. I like a lot of action movies too.
Yeah.
I like some sci-fi, but mostly, like I said, I'm a horror movie person. But I like lots of different kinds of genres, and if something's good, I'll watch it. I don't
Yeah.
care what genre it is.
And I like a mixture of sci-fi and horror too. You know, I like that also.
But yeah, he's like I'll watch horror and true crime happily, like
Yeah.
24/7. It doesn't bother me in the slightest.
True crime gets to me if I watch that shit too much. I'm like, it gets too damn depressing. For me, it feels like a reality.
Well, it is reality.
You know, and yeah, it's not a reality I want to focus on. You know what I mean?
I don't understand like why. I'm not saying it doesn't.
I can take it in limited batches, but if it becomes too much, then you know, if you stare into the abyss too long, you become the abyss. That kind of thing. I don't like that shit.
Yeah, but it's like I don't know. Like I'm not saying it doesn't bother me because it does. You know, and you know, because like I said, I write books about the shit, so it's like a lot of times like I'm immersed in like real shit that happened.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just like reading these horrible details all the time. It bothers me. I'm not saying it doesn't bother me, but it's like not so much that I'm gonna stop doing it.
You see,
And I don't know why that is. I can't explain
It bothers me to the point to where if you start watching that too much, you think it's common, so you think it's going to happen to you and people that you know.
No,
But
it's
it's
not.
rare. It's rare.
It is
that
very
that
rare.
Shit, that shit
Well, I
happens.
understand that.
Right.
So
'Cause
it doesn't get to me. I guess maybe.
I come from an anti-personnel background in the military and shit, where killing people was fucking lauded. That's what you were supposed to do. You know, if you weren't just killing the enemy, if you didn't enjoy it, if you didn't, then so when I see all this shit, I'm like, man, there's a dude like me who's on the other side who's out there. You know what I mean? So it's a different reality for me. I think for her, it's something she's watching. She knows that it happens, but it's something that I might have to prevent or do. So it's
Well, the
from
thing
my
about
background.
it though is that I'm coming at it too from the point of view of
It's like work to me.
well, no, I mean it's like that to me too, but
Yeah.
in some ways it's like well, and coming at it too is like as a woman, it's probably like more likely that some shit like that would
Yeah.
happen to me. But but I have enough distance on it to know it's like, well, this could happen because, you know, it happened to like other people like me, but it's like, it probably won't. Like, I shouldn't worry about it because it's like, yeah, it could happen and that would be bad. But, you know, you can't go through your life worrying about
Right.
that happening to you.
My
But
boy Gramper's in there. He's an ex-cop, so he knows fucking the reality of that kind of shit. And seeing that and living immersed in that for too long can take you over. So it's especially, I've held a fucking beautiful girl's head in my hands, just crushed, you know, and drug her body down the fucking center of a damn bus, fucking surrounded by dead bodies during a fucking crash rescue that me and my unit did down in right outside Sharm el Sheikh in fucking Egypt, because we were the first responders to that bitch. And it was just, dead bodies are something that were a reality to me, you know. It gets to when you start reading about dudes like fucking Raider and these other guys, you're like, you're making more of those, you know what I mean? Why are you doing that? It's just to me it has a different impact, so I can't be immersed in it all the time, you know.
But I think in some ways, and like I said, maybe this is something that people that aren't into horror like don't realize. Like I said, in a way, it kind of, I don't know. I think in most people, I think it kind of makes them like more empathetic in a weird way. Is that a weird thing to say? I kind of feel like that it does. But and reading about true crime too, because you're constantly reading about all this horrible shit that happens to these poor people that did nothing to deserve it, and the more that you read about serial killers and shit like that, I don't find myself like relating more to the serial killers. I find myself relating more to the victims and being like, what the fuck is the matter with these fucking people? You know what I mean? But it's like, but it's interesting because it's like, look what can go wrong.
Yeah, to me it's too depressing to be in it all the time though. Yeah. That's all.
Yeah, I get that. It's like, I don't know, it doesn't...
Because it's actually not a normal phase of life.
It's not.
You know what I mean?
It's
and
not.
to wallow in it, you'll eventually normalize it or accept it. So nah. It's good.
Ben says, the thing that freaked me out most in City of the Living Dead was when he opened the coffin with the pickaxe. See, that scene, I was like, bro, you know she's alive in there. She's screaming. Why on earth would you take the pickaxe, like, right where you know her face is? Like, she's telling you, help me, let me out of this coffin, I got buried alive. And then he just, like, immediately, like, goes, here, her face is probably, like, right here, chonk. And then he's like, fucking, it's, like, right there. You know what I mean? I was like, dude, that was, like, the stupidest thing ever. Ian England says, I find anything I become immersed in basically makes me numb to it. I don't know that I'm numb to it, though. I don't know. It's, like, it's really, like I said, it's kind of hard for me to explain. Because, like, I read about these fucking, even nowadays, like, as old and as jaded as I am, like, I'll still read about a case every now and then and go, well, fuck. I mean, like, that is fucked up. You know what I mean? Because I think about it. But it's like, I don't know. I don't think it, maybe it does that for some people, but I don't think that I've ever, like, become, like, completely numb to it. Like, in a lot of ways you get numb to, like, horror movies, but like I said, that's fake. You know what I mean? You know, and you know that's fake. So it's just kind of like, you know, so you can watch fucked up shit on there and be like, yeah, it's fucked up, but it's not real.
Yeah, it's not. I just really can't take true crime over and over again. Watching that shit, seeing the photographs of the people and everything. I can do it in limited stretches, you know. But no, she can go on that shit because that's her job. You know, she likes writing those books, but I can't do it, man.
Hell, when you were not, remember when you went to Mississippi to see your dad?
Yeah.
Like in the evenings, like if I couldn't think of anything else to watch, I'd just put on like Cold Case Files.
Yeah, I would.
And I would just like watch that for hours and hours.
Yeah,
I would just sit there and watch Cold Case Files for hours.
Yeah, I get depressed.
I'd watch like all this true crime shit.
Looking over my shoulder and shit, fucking worried about people creeping in through fucking windows and fucking that kind of stuff, you know. But look, if you want to eat tonight, I have to get off the show and start cooking. Are you hungry?
Holy shit, it's almost 10 o'clock.
Yeah. And we've been on for probably 4 hours.
Almost.
Okay.
Almost 4 hours.
All
Yeah,
right,
we've been having a good time. Like
I gotta make us something to eat because she's probably gonna watch movies. But I'll see you guys. Not tomorrow, the next day, though, right?
Yeah, Friday night.
Yeah.
And I gotta remember, like, I gotta find a high school photo of me from somewhere. You guys are gonna laugh when you fucking see it. But yeah, thanks for dropping by this evening. I know this one was kind of like all over the map, but you know, whatever. We were talking about censorship and horror movies and stuff like that, so we were just kind of like all over the place. So, you know, hopefully that was all right. Like I said, I got really busy today, and I was like really. I watched a couple documentaries, and I like read a bunch of like articles and stuff. And then I'm like, I'm not ready. I was like so behind, but you know what I mean. Okay, so hopefully everybody had a really good time. Have a good rest of your evening, you guys, and have a good day tomorrow. We're gonna take the day off tomorrow, as we usually do on Thursdays, but we'll be back on Friday night for our sidetrack show, where we'll just be like talking about whatever. So hopefully you guys can drop by and see us then. So we will see you guys on Friday night. Thank you very much for dropping by, and thank you for your super chats, and we'll see you then. Bye.